Hi, I want to reconvene the September 5th, 2017 meeting of the Brattleboro Select Board. We know the meeting has been properly warned because we came together at 5:15 to do interviews, and then we went into executive session. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the August 1st meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 1st meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Under chairman's remarks, I'm going to cede my time to the town manager since he has a very, very long list of things.
Chairperson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I indeed do have a long list tonight, mostly by way of just announcements. I want to start with one that's we hadn't planned to make, but need to because of the storm that we all experienced about an hour and a half ago.
Oh, yeah.
As it came through town, up on the north side of town, there was a tremendous amount of wind damage. Numerous trees down, multiple streets blocked. So we just want people to be aware. There was a period of time when both Upper Dummerston Road and Route 30 were closed. I honestly don't know for sure right at this moment. I'm looking to see if anybody in the audience does. I'm not sure. They may both still be closed. Going up Putney Road itself is open, and most of the businesses are going to be open, I'm sure, but there is some power outage. And if you get off of Putney Road, there's a number of streets that are still blocked. So crews are out. There's a tremendous amount of work going on, but on the north side of town, there has been some pretty significant storm damage, and that'll go on into the nighttime hours. The cleanup from that's going to go on into the nighttime hours. We would expect that tomorrow will be a more normal day. Thank you. Chief or Steve, do you have anything you want to add to that, or is that about it from the field? Thank you. And then the things that we had planned to share, I wanted everybody to know, because of the importance of the topic and the high profile of the topic from earlier this summer, that I'm in the final stages of the work that I've done through these last several weeks regarding diversity and inclusion. Expect to release my written report on that on Friday, September 15th, and then we will have it on the agenda for discussion again here as one of the primary items for our meeting 2 weeks from tonight on September 19th. The New Hampshire Department of Transportation and VTrans have scheduled public meetings regarding the progress that's being made in the design of the new bridge between Brattleboro and Hinsdale. There's going to be two meetings, one in Hinsdale and one in Brattleboro. Next Wednesday evening, September 13th, over in Hinsdale, and Thursday evening, September 14th, right here in the Select Board meeting room. The meetings will both start at 6:30 in the evening. There'll be officials from both departments of transportation that'll be present and able to answer individuals' questions about the visuals that they have around the room for that evening. And then they'll be making a formal presentation beginning at 7 o'clock. Public information and the progress of it. There'll be many more opportunities as the plans become further refined. The train station is an item. We've seen a few letters to the editor. We've certainly had some calls, people in the community expressing concern about the condition there. It's been an issue for us for years now, actually, and there had been some plans to do prior plans to do some improvements there as part of the project when the transportation center was constructed. There were reasons why that wasn't able to be completed at that time, but we still do need to do some improvements there. We recognize that need, and the good news there is some ongoing discussion that began earlier this summer involving Amtrak, VTrans, Representative Molly Burke, our local representative who serves on the Transportation Committee in the House in Montpelier, town representatives, the Wyndham Regional Commission, various other local parties, and a private advocacy group called the Vermont Rail Action Network. So a lot of energy, a lot of ideas being brought to what can be done to improve accessibility and the overall condition at the station. And we will expect to have more details to offer around that in the weeks ahead. And finally, another area of great community concern is and to us as well in town government, is the wall, as it is known in the community, the area that is private property adjacent to the Preston parking lot. There's been some activity there that has increased over the months and has expanded out into the public spaces nearby. and has created significant concerns for broader public safety regarding those impacts on Flat Street, at the transportation center, in the Preston lot, and the surrounding area. Chief Fitzgerald is prepared this evening to offer us an update about what the police department is doing to pay some special attention to that area.
Thank you. I looked over the past summer on our activity down there and what we have changed coming into the June, July, August timeframe, and some of the tactics that we have undertaken down there due to the overwhelming response from the community have been greater surveillance, and not just through our agencies but through other agencies. We have collaborated with various Vermont agencies to give us a hand down there to get some surveillance. We allotted staffing and more money for overtime that's down there, and pretty much adopted a strict enforcement of the town ordinances and the laws concerning the activity that we're down there. To a degree, we are limited on what we can do since it is private property, but the adjacent property owners have given us permission to go on their property, trespass people, and things of that nature. So some of the numbers that we have looked at have been 139 total calls that we went down there. We have made 46 arrests in a 90-day period, issued 17 trespassing affidavits, and responded to 8 overdoses. This is a really good example, if I may, on how law enforcement continuously needs to, and we will continuously collaborate with other agencies. It's clearly, I've said it all along, we're not going to arrest our way out of these problems. We need to get with other organizations and sit down and put our minds together on basically get to the hub, the core. What is the issue down there? Why are they there? Why are they doing what they're doing? And then address those issues, and hopefully the other issues will take care of themselves. And it's on the agenda for later on what we're going to be talking about, on what the police department has done under the panhandling activity that's down there. I believe it all comes together, but we're going to be talking specifically panhandling. But you're going to see that a lot of our activity that we're doing addressing the panhandling will also have a far-reaching effect to the issues that we're facing down at the wall. Any questions from the board?
A little later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Your report
I'm done.
done? Great, thanks. Can I just add one more thing about the Hinsdale Bridge?
Please.
Thing? And people will learn this if you come to the meeting. It's been, the design of the bridge has been a collaboration of the citizens. There's a group
Sure.
of 7 people from New Hampshire and 7 people from Vermont. So when people come to the public meeting, they're going to see something that their peers were involved in. It's not
Yes.
just these nameless people from AOT or, so.
Sure.
I thought that was important for people to know.
That's a really good point, and it's also been really encouraging the degree of real collaboration that's gone on within that group. So we've had meetings where there was quite a lively debate around, should it look more like this or should it look more like that, or some of the functional questions that the DOTs have posed to us as a citizens advisory panel. And each time the group has found its way to consensus, even at times when the conversation started out being pretty divisive. And that's been really good so far.
Yeah, that's why I'd encourage people to come, because you actually do have an impact, because there are people like us listening, so. Okay, thanks. Anyone on the select board have any comments or committee reports?
Just one comment. We lost a citizen in the last week or so. Peter Diamondstone. Whether you agreed with him or disagreed with him, he was always very controversial, and he brought a lot to Brattleboro. Again, whether you agreed or disagreed with him, but just a great character to have, and I think he'll be sorely missed. And so. our condolences to his family. And I don't know if anybody else wants to add, but
I met him a couple times,
Yep.
and I found him to be a very sincere,
yes,
great guy.
Oh, yeah.
So he will be missed.
he will. Very knowledgeable.
I have something to add,
Yeah.
if no one else does. It's been a while since we last met, and feels like it anyway, at least all of August, or everything after the 1st. And I just wanted to underline two things that really struck me this past month, or that past month. One of which was the opening of the welcoming place at the Brattleboro Retreat. I went to that opening, and so did Brandy, I think you were there. But it's a terrific example of our community coming together. A lot of different groups worked on that project, and what they do is provide temporary childcare for people who are undergoing addiction. So I think that's a wonderful development. And also, I wanted to underline the Groundworks Overflow Shelter moving out with the cooperation of Winston Prouty out to that center, because I think it's a terrific temporary solution to a very difficult problem we were facing for the winter months. And again, a lot of different groups in support of that. I went to the meeting for that, and there was like 8 people up there with terrific ideas, and our chief was there, and I found it to be a very positive thing. And I think just wanted to underline both of those because they're both very great examples of our community coming together and sort of cooperating to take care of our most vulnerable, and put that positive spin on a couple of developments
Good.
over the last month.
Another positive development was although the weather was lousy, the Tiny House Festival went on again this week, and a lot of people braved the storm, the elements, and a lot of people that were on their way to the matinees at the Latchis on a rainy day were surprised to see all these things in the parking lot. It was a pretty good energy down there. I was a little disappointed just walking around town to not see many posters in the windows of the businesses. And I was a little surprised at that, because I know that the people that organize the festival are pretty careful not to make it a big affair and invite craftspeople to come down and set up tables and food trucks to come down. They really try to bring people into the downtown and then have them use the existing businesses. So I was a little discouraged to not see. I don't know that it means anything, or it's just what I saw and didn't see, but it just didn't seem to be a lot of support for it downtown. So, at least advertising support. So I just want to mention that.
You can talk to the Downtown Alliance when they're here.
I can, yeah. I was hoping they'd be here. Now-
They'll be here later.
Yeah, we'll see it.
Anything else? Okay, now it's time for public participation. And this is the time in the meeting when somebody would like to make a comment about something that's not on the agenda. And what I would ask is that you keep your comments to no more than 2 minutes. And if you'd like to make a comment, you need to come to the microphone and say your name and where you're from so that we can record you in the record, and people in TV land will know who you are. So is there anyone who would like to say something about an item that's not on the agenda? Yeah, please come up. And just so you know, the microphone is for the television camera, so you will not hear yourself amplified.
Okay. My name is Hannah Neff. I'm a Brattleboro resident. We have a parents group on Facebook that there's been a lively discussion going on this week about the Preston lot and the private property associated with that. And so I'm happy to hear that it's on the agenda, but I just want to share that there are a lot of parents that are really concerned about that space, about the safety of their children as they are at the New England Youth Theater or the Boys and Girls Club, about what's being observed in the public around that. There's been some inappropriate, to say the least, behavior that seems to be spreading. I've heard about drug paraphernalia in parks. So parents aren't bringing their children to parks. They're avoiding Flat Street, maybe even Elliot Street, I think I've heard. And so I brought this to the group to inquire about other parents' concerns, and I was very surprised to hear how many people are as concerned or more than concerned than I am. So I thank you for for addressing this and also incorporating other organizations, because I don't think this is something that we can really do on our own. But if we collaborate with other agencies, I'm hopeful that we can come up with some sort of solution. So, thank you.
Hannah, is this something you can stay for the meeting
Well-
on, or?
Yeah, I would love it.
Good, good.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to make clear is what's happening on Flat Street with the drugs and everything is not on the agenda tonight. Panhandling is.
Right.
But that's not to say we can't talk about it, but I just want to make, I don't want to give you
We would
misconceptions.
like it to be on an agenda, and I think that's why we're here. You know,
Yeah.
I'm here representing a handful of parents, and with more time too, I'm sure I can get more parents. I think we might have a couple more.
Yeah, and it's definitely on the town's agenda, and it's definitely on Chief Fitzgerald's agenda. You know, so it's, just because it's not on our agenda tonight doesn't mean it's not on the broader agenda.
No, we just want to be included
Yeah.
in, you know, in the thoughts about that.
And there will be some overlap, definitely.
So the
Some of what we're
conditions,
talking
the
about.
conditions that give rise to both those problems are the same and need the same response.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the business owner perspective is different than the parent's perspective and our concerns, but there's a lot of overlap, I agree.
Great, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment about something that's not on tonight's agenda?
Uh-oh, they're double teaming the mic.
My name is Robert Stack. I live on 21 Putney Road. I am a trustee of the Brooks Memorial Library. Currently, I'm the president of that board. I wouldn't make a big deal of that. It was just my turn. What I'd like to do is invite you and all the viewers of BCTV to a birthday party. The library, Brooks Memorial. Our building is 50 years old Saturday. And some of you know the history of it. There used to be a library where the parking lot of the post office is. And the post office wanted that space. And we got that brand new building 50 years ago. And we want to have a party. We want to say thank you to all the people who have supported the library all these years. And so what we've decided to do is we're going to have some in the morning. We're going to have for the children. You have posters in front of you that have the sort of the agenda, if you will. We're going to have some entertainment for children. We're going to ask people to bring in their kids, and then we'll have a cake in the meeting room over there on the side, and because we have new carpets, as you know. So, you know, we just think it'll be a great time. And then in the afternoon, we're going to have another set of folks. We're going to start at 2 o'clock. Have some music. And we're going to have some speakers come in. Looking forward to that. Jerry Carbone, our former librarian, is going to talk a little bit about the history of the library. And we're going to have some special speakers come in. Mr.
The Elwell brothers.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure I was going to say
Oh,
that.
the Elwell brothers. They're a singing group, too.
And
Incredible.
Amy Dickinson, who's an author and it was on the radio show on NPR, Wait, Don't Tell Me. She has a new book out, and she's coming to our, and we'll provide, you know, a talk, and we're looking for it. And again, we'll have some more cake and music, and that will go until dusk, which will be 6 o'clock. And I just want to make sure that everybody feels welcome to come, and not just Brattleboro residents, but all the residents that see this BCTV and our patrons and the select board. Now, 50 years ago, when they had the ribbon cutting contest, they didn't know that the Brattleboro Reformer would have their food fest on the 23rd of September. So we like to think that you can do both activities. You know, sort of like eat, pray, and read, something like that. But we do hope that people will come, and I have one other thing I'd like to take a moment, because we have been plagued by a flood in our building, and it was in the mystery section, and it was a mystery where the water was coming. And what recently happened was Russ Brown and Steve Barrett, who work for the town, came and found the leak, which involved Tyler and sewers and drains, and they just were great, and they really helped us. And we have dry floors. Now we have to replace the linoleum in the back, but that's okay. We figured out the leak, and I wanted to publicly thank them because we were sort of
Up a creek?
no, we were a bit of a pest. Because every time it rained, we called them. So you can imagine they got tired of hearing from us. But anyway, I want to thank them publicly for their work.
Terrific.
And I just want to say that even though it's our birthday, I brought you guys a present, which is your own hard copy of the strategic plan for the next 5 years of the library. I've mentioned it before, and it is online, but now you have your own copy that you can take home and read. I know. And this was led under the intrepid goodwill of Jane Southworth, who many of you know, and so I'm sure she'd be happy to sign your copy at the birthday party. And please do come to the birthday party. As we know, Peter's father, Corky Elwell, was town manager when the building opened. So isn't it nice that we can bookend the building with the two Elwells? We're really lucky and honored to do that. And Amy Dickinson is coming. She will say wonderful things about libraries, and she's really, really funny. And thanks to her and everyone's books and the Friends of the Berkeley Public Library, we will have 50 copies of her new book to give away to the first 50 families who arrive. So that's really spiffy, and she will stay and sign them. So we want to see everybody there. Everybody come. We're going to have a great time.
Great.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else in the public have something they'd like to say that's not on the agenda? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to liquor commissioners. Would someone like to make a motion to convene as liquor commissioners?
So moved.
We have a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are convened as liquor commissioners. We have one item tonight, which is a first-class liquor license for the Basement Pub LLC that will do business as Latchis Pub. So we'll let Peter fill us in.
This is before you for the same action that you're used to seeing as these come up from time to time throughout the year, but in just a slightly different context. So the action is that we're recommending that you do approve this application and send it on to the Department of Liquor Control for final action in the issuance of the license. The slightly different circumstance here is because there's going to be some renovations made at the property. Some of that involves what would otherwise be fire code issues. And so you have before you a sort of unequivocal thumbs up from the police department and a conditional thumbs up from the fire department. Normally you get the unconditional from them as well. But they've reviewed the plans. There's been communication between the state fire safety people and our own fire department as well as the owners. It's all very clear what is going to get accomplished there before they receive their state permit. So as long as that actually does occur in the manner that it's planned to occur, then this is ready for your approval. If for some reason it didn't, the state isn't going to issue its
Right.
fire safety permit, and we'd be back before you, but I can't imagine a circumstance that would cause that. So we're happy to recommend that you approve the application for a first-class liquor license and entertainment permit for the Latchis Pub.
So I make the motion?
Does anyone?
Mr. Ingerman here?
Yeah, is-
Yeah, David Ingram here.
Oh,
great.
there he is. Go
Would you
ahead.
like to?
To speak for a second?
Yeah.
Sure, if you'd like to, yeah.
No, but
Make a pitch.
You could tell us all about the
Yeah,
new
I'm glad it's
restaurant.
reopening.
This is the third time I've been in front of you, and the first time I came is when we opened Ramontos.
Oh,
So
that's right.
I'm used to opening things that have been closed for a long time and resurrecting history. So the Latchis Pub is another project similar to that. As you know, the business that was there failed after the flood. They've had problems. After looking at the condition of their kitchen, they failed for other reasons. It was not a place where I'd take anybody, including myself. So we've been very steadfastly fixing the entire building up to code. I've had all the DEC is involved, health, and every inspector I could think of. I call it permatory. So assuming that process will be going, we should be open in the next month or so, depending on all the things. But I do appreciate the conditional approval of this board A little bit about the Latchis Pub. It's going to be, for now, it's going to be beer and wine only. Probably closing a half an hour after the last movie. We do not want to be the last man standing in town. As you've been talking today about some of the problems downtown, we do not want to contribute to that. So we're going to have a reasonably early close. The plan is to have the pub operate mostly upstairs, but there's that beautiful downstairs room that we're going to try and bring live music on Friday and Saturdays to support the arts community in town. And they really need a place like that. And hopefully, if the combination is correct and we have the right product, then it'll be a great asset for the town and certainly for the Latchis. So we're very excited about it and very tired because it's an hourly and painstaking process to fix that place up.
It's a
Thank you very
great
much.
spot.
We're very excited.
It's a wonderful spot.
It's a very wonderful spot, and our long-term plan is to bring large venue live music to town, and hopefully that will invigorate the Latchis and all the downtown restaurants.
Yeah.
And I've been in that business before. I have several friends in the music business, and we believe Latchis could be the perfect place for large venue music, and it would be a boom to the whole downtown area.
That's great.
Very excited for that. Thank you.
Exciting to hear.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions or? Oh,
Sorry.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm very excited to have a spot for live music. I played in bands here for many years when you could get off your own set and go hear music at the Mole's Eye, or if I was playing at the Common Ground, could go somewhere else. And so that makes me happy. And my one question is, I'm excited to have large venue bands come in, but will you also be using the space for some of our local talent as well?
Oh, the downstairs is for local
Good.
talent
Okay,
only.
just wanted to make sure it wasn't-
The room, that
Yeah.
room will hold about 100 to 120
Great.
people, so.
So local
The
bands.
large venue stuff is for upstairs.
Right.
But the downstairs is specifically for local.
Excellent.
And we're gonna do things like, we're gonna have hopefully a Friday and Saturday night dinner that is music driven, and a
Great.
Sunday brunch, we call it a blues brunch. So it should be
Yes.
fun. For anybody who loves arts and music, it should be a fun place. I'm very
Excellent.
excited, so.
Thank you.
does anyone else on the board have any comments or questions?
That's great.
Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah. I move that we approve a first-class liquor license for Basement Pub LLC, doing business as Latchis Pub.
We have a motion to approve a first-class liquor license for the Basement Pub doing business as the Latchis Pub. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries 5-0.
Good luck.
Congratulations and thank you. Thanks for
I'll keep you
fixing
posted
it.
as we get closer.
Yeah, let us know. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners?
So
We have a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Would someone like to make a motion to convene as water and sewer commissioners?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion to convene as water and sewer commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are water and sewer commissioners.
Stevie Barrett.
First item on the agenda is the Western Avenue water main. And we have Commissioner Steve, or Department Head Steve Barrett with
Oh,
us.
call him Commissioner. Commissioner's good.
Thank you. I'm here tonight to seek approval for a bid to repair the I-91 16-inch water main that broke earlier this year. And the board is familiar because we also approve funds in our budget, utilities budgets, to make this repair. So we put bids out for this, and we received 2 bids. The low bid was from Halleck Construction from Ludlow, Mass., and they came in at $320,210.10. And the next bid in line was JP Seacard from Barton, Vermont, and they had a bid of $417,755. So we had our engineer consultants, Dufresne, assess the bids, check references. And this Halleck also did work in this area. They did the Algiers water main when that project was done. So they come recommended also from their references, and the engineering company has also recommended that we accept this bid. Now with that, just so you know, I'll go over the numbers a little bit. The award to Halleck in the amount of $320,210.10. The project budget was set at $460,000. And it's really an excellent construction price, together with the engineering expense of $34,000 and a project contingency, just to make sure in case things happen. Things do happen on jobs, of $20,000. That results in an overall savings at least $86,000. So we're pretty happy that we're under the engineer's estimate. So I'm seeking your approval to accept the bid, the low bid from Halleck, from Ludlow, Mass.
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
No, it's get it done.
Let's get it done.
I'm kind of curious if it will disrupt traffic at all in any
The
way.
the State of Vermont Agency of Transportation, we had to go through a permit process with them. And so the actual Halleck Construction will propose a plan that would be reviewed by us and, more importantly, by the agency to make sure that it meets their codes and standards.
That's part of the process.
We suspect that it may have to be one lane, alternating, do one lane and then the other, which always has an impact. They do have restrictions on Fridays or before holidays so that, we don't disturb traffic on peak times. But it will have to go under their review.
And just to clarify, everything that you just spoke to would be impacts to interstate traffic. There
That's
might also
correct.
be some impacts up on Western Avenue
There
or
could
not?
be if, for instance, if some of the on-ramps were to back up, then it would affect our traffic, yes. But we'd be monitoring this we'd work with the police department. We notify all the agencies at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day of what the traffic plan is.
And it can't be any worse than what we've been going through when they close the
I
exits
suspect
during
not.
the
We've had
bridge,
3
so.
years of it.
Steve, I don't know if it says it in here, I may have missed it, but when would this happen?
Well, if this is approved by the board tonight, then we will go and sign the contract with Halleck and then come back with a schedule. We want it done before, winter, before snow flies.
Oh, okay, so.
So it has to be done this year. This is a main transmission line that feeds the
Right.
town. There's only 2 that feed the town, and this is the larger of the 2, so it's important that we get it repaired and back in service.
Good.
Anyone else on the board have any comments, questions? Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions about the bid for the I-91 water main? Would anyone on the board like to make a motion?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go. To approve awarding a contract in the amount of $320,210.10, that always drives me crazy, to Halleck Water Contractors, Inc. for replacement of the Western Avenue water main where it passes over I-91.
We have a motion to award a bid to Halleck sorry, everybody, I've got a cold. For the fixing the water main on I-91. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is a drinking water assessment management grant that we're being asked to accept and appropriate.
Okay, so back in May, I came to the board and asked if we could apply for this grant, and so we did. And then we received notification that we've been approved for the grant. And what this is it's called a asset management grant. And this is for the water plant, the water division side of the utilities, to assess the information about the system, and also to basically to look at all the assets that we have and then to put a value on those, and also to look at the personnel that we have. And so we're excited about it. The state actually encouraged us to apply for this grant. They wanted Brattleboro to be on this list, so I'm seeking your approval.
And the grant's for $20,000.
Grant is for $20,000.
Does anyone on the board have any? John has a
No,
question.
no, I read over this a couple times, I was just trying to figure it out. Why we need it, or maybe you can explain.
What happens is, it basically, they're looking at the inventory, they look at the condition of the assets, they look at the life cycle, they look at the mapping, the development of succession plans for when we change personnel. And then when you do that, then it gives you the real value of what is the existing water
treatment plant, what is its value, and what is the equipment, and what's the life expectancy. So all these things are important, and also helps you with potential funding when we're looking at an upgrade for the water treatment plant, which currently we are in a preliminary design to see, where do we go? The water plant was put online in 1989. It's ready to, it's done trillions of gallons of water in treatment. So there's time for an upgrade, and this will assist us in getting funding for that. And that's why the state was encouraging us to do that. And it's a responsible thing to do for all water departments or any business, but this gives us the state has identified that need and then offered these grants to see that it gets taken care of. So it was really an olive leaf that was handed to us to do it the right way.
Well, I was looking at it thinking, every department, we'd love to do this in every department.
You're going to be inventorying everything and identifying the different categories.
Right.
And it starts with which kind of surprised me, figuring out what your goals are and then how you're going to tell if you're getting there or not.
So you definitely come up with a good plan.
And I just assume we always do that anyway.
Yep.
Interesting.
Does anyone else on the board have any comments or questions? Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions about our drinking water assessment management grant? Seeing none, would anyone on the board like to make a motion to accept the grant?
I'll make a motion to approve a $20,000 drinking water asset management grant from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation.
We have a motion to approve a $20,000 drinking water management assessment grant from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The grant is approved 5-0. Thank you, Steve. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are no longer Water and Sewer Commissioners. Next up is unfinished business, and the first item is our regular update on the police fire facilities project. And the town manager will give us that report.
Yes, ma'am. So as you came in this evening, if you came in from the parking lot, you saw a large dumpster. In 62 years of functioning from this building, the police department has collected a few things along the way that they don't need to take with them up to 62 Black Mountain Road. Rest assured, there's also a good bit of furniture and other materials from the department downstairs that are making the move this week, actually, up to 62 Black Mountain Road, and then new equipment that's also being delivered to there. So we are right now in the middle of that process that we described to you before, where there'd be a few weeks of functioning different units, slowly starting to occupy 62 Black Mountain Road, while other units are still functioning from here. But by another couple of weeks from now, we'll be operating, the police department will be fully moved in and operating from 62 Black Mountain Road. And because once they're fully functional, it will be hard to open up for a true open house. The public is welcomed to come into the building and enjoy the space and see what the investment of the community has bought. We want to do that at the last moment before throwing the on switch to full operations up there. And that's on Friday afternoon, September 15th. So we'll do some additional promotion of this, get the word out further into the community. But I'm happy to announce as of now that the plan is firm. It'll be Friday the 15th. It'll begin at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with a ceremony outside the building where we'll cut a ribbon and push a button.
Oh, the Cato button. Oh, yeah.
And open the doors of the police department to the public, and then there'll be 4 hours between 3 and 7 when the building will be open for people to come in and tour and enjoy some refreshments. So we're looking forward to that moment to share that with all the people of Brattleboro, and then once the open house has come and gone, for the police department to get fully functional in their new space. At the fire station, we still have a good ways to go, several more months of construction. And as the written report identifies, we actually had encountered a situation that was an unintended consequence of the flexibility that the contractor and the department have shown with each other. They've been collaborating really well. We described in the last update on August 1st how Instead of having a really clean, definitive, earlier in the summer moment when phase 1 switched into phase 2, we captured some efficiencies in the overall construction project by having that line be fuzzier and having some of the construction move into occupied space and just kind of move some folks out of the way. And that's gone well for most of the summer, but we've gotten to the point now where so much construction had come into the occupied space that it was becoming unhealthy for the firefighters to still be in that space. And so we assessed that last week and determined that we've got about 2 to 3 weeks worth of construction work before we'll be able to actually do the phased switch that was intended all along, where the newly constructed space will be finished sufficiently. There'll be some fine detail work that'll need to be done at the end of the job, but it'll be finished sufficiently that the department can move in and function from the newly constructed space while the final part of the renovation occurs in the existing station. But because we had gotten to this point where we needed to do something as an interim arrangement for the firefighters, we did some brainstorming around that, came up with several different alternatives, and the simplest, if it could possibly work, we imagined when I made the call that this would be a stretch to make such a big ask, but we called the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships to see if there was possibly some space next door at the Samuel Elliott Apartments where the department could have some space for at least the overnight hours during this 3-week period. And the answer we got back very promptly, like within an hour, was, yeah, that there wasn't room there, but they had an even better alternative for us, which is just up the hill at Moore Court, a 4-unit apartment unit had come available, a 4-bedroom apartment unit had come available, and they were going to need some time to turn it over, do the process they do to freshen up an apartment, make it ready for the next occupants. And they were happy to have us come in and occupy it for this couple of weeks in the interim. So we did that. We arranged for it to be cleaned, in one day rather than over a process. The firefighters have moved in there. They will function from there for another 2 weeks or so. And then we'll clean up the place nice when we leave and get back into the fire station and get on with the project. But we really want to express publicly our gratitude to the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships for rising to this occasion and making such a seamless kind of solution available to us. And then down below at the station, at the intersection of Spring Street and Elliott Street, we've completed the modifications that needed to be made there to move the hydrant and modify the curb line so that there is sufficient turning radius for the large fire vehicles to come out of Spring Street onto Elliott Street. There are additional improvements. You saw a drawing in the backup materials that are actually the backup materials for the ordinance, the parking ordinance later on the agenda. Showing how we have a design for Church Street intersection with Elliott Street to be narrowed and made safer in very much the same manner as what we've done at the top of Union Hill. It's got that extra wide area where it's kind of hard it's a long walk for people crossing at the crosswalk, and it's hard for drivers to know exactly where they're supposed to be, whether they're making a right turn or a left turn there. So it'll become much safer for everyone when that area is narrowed up. We don't know exactly when we'll be able to proceed with that, but we're asking you this evening in anticipation of that to modify the parking ordinance for that area of town. It'll implement what was previously recommended by the Police Fire Facilities Advisory Committee to eliminate the 3 spaces in front of TJ Buckley's. Move them out of the way so that the trucks have room to come out of Spring Street, but replace those 3 that are lost with 7 new spaces that are further east on Elliott Street in the area that's currently no parking. So there's a net gain of 4 spaces there. And then we also would like to place meters on the first 3 spaces going up the west side of Church Street so that, those will become spaces that will also turn over for public use. So that all of those parking changes are in an ordinance that'll come before you here in a few minutes as a separate item on this agenda, but they're being driven by the modifications to the streets there for this project. You have the usual list of the project-related expenses that I've authorized, and as usual, they are just a few, and they're small magnitude operating expenses mainly at the construction sites. Overall, we have a remaining uncommitted balance of $541,576. We're asking you to authorize that $88,000 of that be spent this evening, or you authorize this evening that we can proceed with 2 items, which I'll go through in more detail in just a moment. If you do approve those, that'll leave us with a balance of $453,576. Remember, this is the uncommitted balance, so this is net of all of the obligations that we've incurred. So the remaining expenses to the contractor, as well as any of the smaller remaining expenses that are already under contract with one party or another. This is actual, cash that we would have available at the end of the job of $453,000. But we also have, and our list is getting smaller and smaller. And we've been carrying for the last several months a list of things that we plan to do as part of finishing the job, and then a couple of other items that we could possibly do at the end of the job. We're still carrying those 3. That's signage up at the police department, the potential for the remaining roof that wasn't replaced earlier in the job to be replaced at the police department, and the carport outside the new police department. We will come back to those items later in the job. It does appear that there'll be funds sufficient for those if we decide to proceed with them, and still have approximately $200,000 left at the end of the job that would be available for reallocation. On the potential items of the roof replacement and the carport, we intend to ask the PFFBC to come back together for a meeting to consider the information from the project team about those 2 items, so that the committee can provide advice to the select board about whether or not they believe that those are good investments from these funds that were approved by town meeting and part of the bond that was issued for these projects. Do they recommend proceeding with that at this time, or do they recommend instead saving that money and having it be able to be reallocated to other capital work? And we'll address that first with the advisory committee and then bring it back to the select board sometime in the next couple of months. We want to get a little closer to the end of the job, make sure there are no further surprises at the central fire station, and then have that committee meeting and then come back to the select board. So the 2 items that we're asking you for authorization on tonight are, one, both of them are items you've heard about before. One of them is $33,000 for the expanded Plymovent system. Plymovent is those very large yellow hoses that attach to the exhaust pipes of the fire apparatus. We have found there was a designed Plymovent system for the new part of the station, but not for the renovated old station. We've found in the further discussions with the department about how they're going to function in the space, and then some further review with the project team, that it really, from a indoor air quality point of view, is necessary to have Plymovent also in not every bay of where the existing station is being renovated, but in 2 of those bays where the net cost we had estimated at $30,000 and the actual cost has come in at $33,000. So we're asking that you approve having us spend that $33,000 and get that work done. And the other, which was just waiting until we were, again, far enough along in the job that we knew we were going to have sufficient funds to proceed with this. We are there now, and we're approaching the end of the time frame for this season when we would be able to get this work done before snow flies. So we would like your approval to move forward now with the previously bid cost of $55,000 for the demolition of the former West Brattleboro Fire Station, installation of drainage and parking and landscaping at that site in its place. All of those things are required by the DRB permit that was issued for the project, and we believe this is the appropriate time to move forward with that.
Great. Can I ask one question? We're moving, but the police department's moving in next Friday,
Yes.
but we have no signs.
We will have
So-
temporary signage in place for both the police department and the reformer. That'll be there for several weeks while we do the design and proceed with the signage.
Okay.
The permanent signage for the site.
Okay, that sounds good. Anyone on the board have any questions, comments?
Makes sense.
Does anyone in the public have any questions or comments about the police fire safety report? Police fire building facilities report? Whatever it is. Okay, so we need, the town manager has asked us to approve expenditures on 2 items. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move to authorize the expenditure of $55,000 for demolition of the old West Brattleboro Fire Station and construction of a new parking lot, drainage, and landscape improvements at that site, and the expenditure of $33,000 for expansion of the Plymovent vehicle exhaust system at the central fire station.
All right, we have a motion to authorize the expenditure of $55,000 for the West Brattleboro Fire Station, or Old West Brattleboro Fire Station, and $33,000 for the expansion of the Plymovent vehicle exhaust system at the Central Fire Station. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next on the agenda is the continuation of a discussion we started at the July 11th meeting about panhandling. And at that meeting, we discussed 4 action items, which was looking into a town jobs program, much like Portland, Maine, and Albuquerque, New Mexico do right now. Some kind of container for donations. I don't know if it's called a container, whatever we don't know what it would be, but it's a container so that people downtown or who are downtown can put donations in a box that can be used for broader social service agencies. The chief of police, Mike Fitzgerald, has a task force that he's working on that would go in and talk to the panhandlers downtown. And also, we discussed a survey so that we can get really a handle of what people think is going on downtown. Tonight, unless anybody here feels the need, I'm not sure we're going to take any concrete action items. This was more of an update on what these things are, because some of these are intensive that we want to get right and not just do it in a 2-week time span. So I don't know if we want to turn it over to the town manager first to talk about jobs and the container, if that makes sense to everybody, and then we can go through the other action items.
So,
And we will take comments from the public, so I don't want you to think you're being left out. I'm sorry.
we have learned that both in Albuquerque and in Portland, they're very happy with the results of the jobs programs that they've established. I'll cut right to the chase on the major concern that we had as an employer, and explain how they've addressed the paperwork issue, the regulatory side of this, and then move from that into a quick summary of how the two programs work. They're almost identical. They're different in one important respect, but they're almost identical because Albuquerque came first and it was working well. And when Portland went out looking for solutions there, they actually looked at what Albuquerque was doing and modeled their program after that. And so they're really quite similar. And in each case, they contract for the actual management of the day labor function, which is how they deal with what would otherwise be a increased risk and a paperwork challenge at best for the municipal government. So the city of Portland and the city of Albuquerque each contract with an entity, and that entity provides the actual placement of the individuals into day labor work, all of the paperwork that's filed. Now, the ways in which the two programs are different is in Albuquerque, they're doing a variety of different tasks, mostly for the city. But in some cases not, and it's again coordinated by the social service agency in Albuquerque. So there's a nonprofit organization that does the coordination of the actual work there. In Portland, there are two separate organizations that provide, basically it's like a temp service, but specifically for day labor kind of field services. And so they've contracted with one of those entities to do this, and it's really just for the administration of it. All of the participants in the program are working for the city. They're actually all working within the parks maintenance organization, which had suffered a lot of budget cuts over the years, and they weren't satisfied with the condition of their parks. And so they've actually utilized this work resource, this group of people, to keep the parks in better condition. So it's interesting that in one case it's a social service agency providing that function, in the other case it's a for-profit entity that's doing it. Otherwise, the programs operate pretty similarly, which is that there's a city-provided van that travels around and actually stops, and there's a trained social service employee who interacts with the folks who are asking for money and offers them the opportunity to get into the van and go get some work rather than be out with their often cardboard signs and otherwise asking for folks to give them money. And in both cases, they've seen a significant decline in the amount of folks actually out in both of those places. It was more commonly in medians. These are larger environments, 60,000 people in Portland and 600,000 people in Albuquerque. So a lot of this activity was occurring at intersections in roadway medians. But otherwise, similar kind of circumstance to what we have in Brattleboro. And so folks are offered the opportunity to get a ride to the place where the paperwork gets done and they get actually placed for work. The folks in Portland did express to me that they have a hope that because this is an organization, the administrating organization is one that actually performs this service for employers for a fee, that these individuals will not only develop some skills while they're doing the parks maintenance work, but also then be within the system of this day labor placement entity and might actually get the opportunity for more regular employment with a variety of different public and private employers around the Portland area. So it's working there. I don't know exactly what it took to get the Albuquerque project up and running, but after some pretty detailed review with the folks in Portland, we learned that they have a variety of different funding sources. They actually started with some CDBG money and some proceeds from a sale of a property. That they, about a year ago right now, lost a court case. They actually had tried the prohibit panhandling, prohibit loitering approach, and they were challenged on that, and they lost the court case for reasons that we would reasonably expect them to lose the court case because of the advice that we've received about what you can and can't legally do from an enforcement point of view because of the constitutional right that folks have to actually ask for money. So based on that, Portland then was saying to themselves about a year ago, well, what are we going to do now? And it was from that the Albuquerque example was brought to their attention. They agreed they wanted to pursue it. It was getting ready to be cold weather again. And so they spent the winter months putting together this plan of how they were going to fund it and how they were going to organize it. By April, they were ready to approve and move forward, and May 1st, they kicked off the program. It's been operating through this summer. So I believe if you do wish to further pursue this particular aspect of the multifaceted solution for Brattleboro, that nearby we have a good example that we could learn from and follow in terms of developing our own plan. But I also believe, based on their experience, that from a funding point of view, it would need to be addressed during the budget time, and from just a planning and preparing and being ready to do it well point of view, it would be something we'd want to follow a similar time frame as they did. Use these next few months during the winter, next several months during the winter to get ready, and then when the weather turns warmer next spring, be ready to roll it out.
Okay. Do you want to just go through them and then we can have a
Sure.
general discussion?
Okay.
Look at the other-
So the other item that I looked into was the deposit boxes, and I'd love to tell you that I knew this, but if I had known it, I would have said it to you the last time we talked about it. So I was pleasantly surprised to learn that next to each of our pay boxes in the parking lots downtown, we actually have a secure box where people can pay their parking tickets. So if they find themselves in that situation, they don't have to mail it or they don't have to come to the police station to drop it off. Can actually put it in a box that's right there next to the pay station. They are very secure boxes. They've worked well for that purpose. I'm not sure, just from a effectiveness point of view, that we necessarily want to mix the uses. So it might be that we'd still want to put a separate secure box, either right there next to it or some other prominent place with a sign on it, and explain what the program is about. We'd certainly have to decide who's going to be the recipient of those funds. Is the town going to receive all of them and then disperse them to various parties, or is there going to be a an entity, a social service organization that's going to be the recipient of those. There's details around that as well that we would need to work out, but whether it's using the existing boxes or whether it's purchasing new ones to place in a similar location, I believe that's also can be a viable part of this moving forward.
Great. Chief, do you want to give us an update? Do you have anything to update us on? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you have your task force.
Let's put him on this.
I'm going to put you on the spot because you're sitting
No, I
there.
appreciate it. They have done a lot of good work. Basically, we reached out to various organizations throughout the town to see if anyone would be interested, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. And this was one where, it's a hard phone call to make when you're asking someone to give up some of their resources, some of their staffing, and I can't compensate them any financial way, strictly volunteer, and it's been overwhelmingly positive, so very appreciative of that. We have Turning Point, we have 2 representatives from Turning Point that show up on a regular basis to our meetings. We have 2 individuals from BMH that already do the community outreach on the medical side that were very interested and wanted to join us, our police social worker, and of course the law enforcement component. So out of those 4 groups is what we're looking out to make for the outreach team. A law enforcement officer, someone who is well-versed in recovery, someone who's well-versed in mental health and the social services, and someone from the medical field. And they've gone out twice already and made some contacts and just basically trying to find their way. And once we realized that, it's concerning when you find out what you don't know. And that's where we were at, we don't know. So we reached out to an organization called PERI, and it's a police-assisted addiction recovery initiative. And it's a organization out of Gloucester, Mass. I don't know if anyone has heard all the work that they have done in the addiction field. And they pretty much came up with a model for outreach. Our biggest obstacles were how are we going to measure our successes and how to improve, and how are we going to gather data. So we reached out to PERI and had a meeting with their representative last week. Very encouraging meeting, and we're now in communications with their executive director to actually join their organization and benefit from all the communities across the country that are dealing with this issue. So we're real excited about that. Hopefully we can get this up and running through their organization and learn from them. We're probably in September, maybe in October timeframe is what we'd be shooting for, to really copy their models. And that's where we're at. We're plugging away and working on those issues.
Great, thank you.
You're
And we
welcome.
may have more questions for you when we get to the discussion section
Absolutely.
of this topic.
Okay.
Thank you. The 4th one was a survey, and I've sort of lost track of where that is. And David's name was associated with something. Oh, good, okay. Michelle, do you want to come up? Yeah.
Okay.
There were like 5,000 emails, and
Right.
you never know when the end of the trail is.
And you were in the motherland, so
Yeah.
you missed that thread. So we're Downtown Alliance and the Chamber were charged with starting to gather data to really understand the scope and the quantity of panhandling and how did it relate to people's perception. As we started to develop the survey, we realized that it needs quite a bit of retooling that I think David and Diana had both worked on a bit. So I think it's almost ready to launch. It is going to go out via SurveyMonkey. It's going to be segmented to different populations. One would be downtown residents, people in the DID. One is other Brattleboro residents, and then one specifically for merchants as well. So it's the same survey, but segmented questions throughout. I'm not sure if do we have a draft of that prepared for tonight or no?
I don't believe so.
Okay. But I think it just needs one last a bit of approval by, I guess, our collaborative team that we're working with before we launch that to gather some hard numbers.
Great.
Yes. But we do have another initiative. I don't know if you're ready for that.
Yeah,
We do.
Yeah, sure. Tell us
Okay.
about it.
Should I go do that now?
No, go ahead,
Okay.
yeah.
So we, oh, great. So we, meaning the Downtown Alliance, the town, the chamber, the BPD, Groundworks, we've gotten together quite a few times now to discuss what can we do now. We know we can't alleviate all of the greater issues of poverty, and at the same time, we know that we want to take some action. So similarly, just as Mr. Elwell described that he is educating himself on other programs, Chief Fitzgerald just described that he's educating himself on other programs. We're also right now hoping to continue to educate each other on just some of the basic facts and rules and laws, because there seems to be some maybe misunderstanding around panhandling. So months ago, Josh Davis from Groundworks, Chief Fitzgerald and I wrote a article for the Commons, just laying out what the rules are. What's the law, what isn't the law? And so our collaborative committees have drafted a public service announcement that we are hoping can get placed at the parking parking meters, at ATMs. And basically, I'll read it for the television viewing audience. It just says, Brattleboro Public Service Announcement. Panhandling becomes disorderly conduct and is illegal at parking stations, ATMs, or when someone is exiting or entering a car. If you are approached for money at one of these spots, please contact the police. For emergencies, dial 911, and then for non-emergencies, we have the non-emergency number there. And then the sign goes on again to educate full scope and spectrum. It continues, otherwise, carrying a sign and asking for money is protected under the First Amendment. If you are panhandling, please contact one of our service agencies below and your needs will be met with dignity. And then there's a number for social services to dial 211. The logos of the BPD, Groundworks, Brattleboro Alliance, and the Chamber are all at the bottom. And then it says, thanks for keeping our community safe and healthy for everyone. So I'm not quite sure, I'm not sure if anyone knows what the process is to get these printed, get them laminated, what kind of approval do we need to put them on the parking meters and in the lots and at ATMs. But there's been such increasing concern and commentary online and in person that we're really hoping that we can move forward with something that is quite literally free. I mean, I'm happy to print these. The co-op designed and printed these. The samples that we have here. We're open to feedback on the sign, but just because we can't do everything doesn't mean that we don't want to do something. And to implement a jobs program and to implement kiosks, donation kiosks, those are wonderful ideas that I know that we'll pursue as a community, but we'd really like to just take some action now with something as simple as a public service announcement that just states the facts.
So, Michelle, just one quick question.
Yeah.
And just to make it clear, this is not a town committee. This is something that you guys have organized on your own. And so I just wanted to make sure that people knew that. And so I'm just trying to figure out where it can go from here.
Correct.
With our support.
Yep.
You know, so.
And just, there have been people on the select board who have attended some of these
Right.
meetings
Yep.
to be
Yep.
doing their due diligence and doing their
Yep.
duty. So that's where that collaborative
Right.
nature comes
Yep.
from.
And these are, it's, the intention is for these to be in businesses, and restaurants, and bulletin boards around town too, and in private spaces as well as public.
Right. Right, we can go ahead and disseminate these to the merchants, and they can put them up in private spaces, but we really want the information at the site of the panhandling when it is actually, can become disorderly conduct, when people have their wallet out and they're putting the money in, or going to the ATM at 9 o'clock at night and you're the only one there. It's important for people to know, for community citizens to know that in those situations, they can call 911. Right. So, should I stay? Go. I have a lot more to say too, but
We're losing
I'm joking, but
we're losing our chair.
I'm joking. Maybe on the announcement here, it might be worth having the town manager tell us, maybe at the next meeting, obviously if we want to put these on the pay and display, we need to figure out how to do it, where, you know what I mean? Can it be this big? Does it need to be smaller? Do you know what I mean? Like, would that be helpful, so we can figure that out? And then we can figure out, we can approve it.
Sure.
It's a
I mean,
great,
does that make
it's a
sense?
great piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like
No,
where
no,
can
it is.
where
I
can
mean,
it
it's what
go?
says.
Yeah.
Tim looks like, you know what I mean? Like, where can it go?
I'm not sure how to approach this. Are we sort of opening it up to comments about all
Yeah,
of the subjects
all the
or
stuff.
just the
No, all the-
sign and working
all-
backwards?
All the stuff, whatever you like.
It seems like we should deal with this specifically
You want to just do this now?
in the context of everything else, but if we, anyway, I'd like us to deal with this first.
Okay.
Just because it's here in front of us and we're starting to get the information.
Yeah.
If we take off in different directions, we may not get back to it.
I mean, to me, we have to figure out where it could go.
Yeah.
Well, that's an issue.
I'd like a clarification, and maybe I can ask our police chief, because I'm a little bit, thank you for the work on this, by the way. I think it's great that the group has gotten together. It's been my understanding from all of the discussions we've had and a discussion I had with Chief Fitzgerald, that panhandling does not necessarily become disorderly conduct at parking stations, ATMs, or when someone is entering or exiting a car, that it could be construed as disorderly conduct. And I think that's a very important distinction there for me. When I read this, it says panhandling becomes disorderly conduct and is illegal, which I don't think is true, is it? I mean, sorry to get you up and down.
You're right. However, disorderly conduct, you could do something at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and do that same action at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that could be, at 2 o'clock in the morning, could be considered disorderly conduct because time, the darkness,
Yep.
just your fear. So yes, panhandling definitely could become disorderly conduct, which is illegal
Yeah.
at parking stations, ATMs, or when someone's exiting and entering their car. Basically, where a person is most vulnerable is when it would meet the criteria of disorderly conduct. Okay, so someone opening up their purse, anywhere money's exchanged. If an individual cannot go anywhere, so like if you're in a line and you can't
Right.
actually go anywhere,
Being blocked.
it's considered disorderly conduct. Now, disorderly conduct, and Michelle said exactly that, you can call the police. And it's up to the individual on where that threshold is. If that individual is concerned to the point of their safety and it meets this criteria, then absolutely it is disorderly conduct.
Can I just follow up on what Tim said? Because I'm now seeing, but if the person is just standing, because one point we're saying this is disorderly conduct if you do it at these places, but then we're saying carrying a sign and asking for money is protected under the First Amendment. So what if somebody is just standing with a sign next to one of our pay and display machines?
I would ask them to leave.
But even though that, why?
If someone called on that type of situation, I would ask them to leave, because people are vulnerable in that situation. They're actually taking wallets out of their pockets. They're actually opening up their purse. I would come down and address that, yes.
For me, it might just be a wording issue. Because it says panhandling becomes disorderly conduct. And maybe this isn't the forum to sort of pick apart
Right.
the,
Or I was gonna say may.
Yeah, man, can I pop up for a second? I just want to come up as
If you
a...
guys want to sit up here and make it a lot
No,
easier.
because now I'm just sitting up here as a citizen,
Right. Well,
not
I-
Downtown Alliance, because I think there's, harassment and things like that are in the eyes of the beholder.
sure,
Right.
sure.
So just before coming here, I went to Hazel to grab a burger because I knew this was going to be a long night because I'm on later in the agenda.
Can you send out?
And I want to get hangry in the meeting. So I was walking down Elliot Street. There were about 5 men smoking weed out of a homemade bong in a can, right kind of in front of the Indo between Metropolis and Hazel. I walked by and it crossed my mind, like, I'm glad my children aren't here with me. Would I feel differently right now if those were teenagers? I was checking my own self, right? Trying to be self-reflective about, do I act? Do I not act? What do I do as a citizen? I ended up just going and eating a burger and still sitting with it. When I left, I walked out, crossed the street to go to my car. One of the same men that was just getting high was holding this sign. You are lucky I'm not robbing you. So that's not threatening, really. It's not dangerous necessarily. It's rude and in poor taste and ill-mannered. But this is a separate issue, but of course it's connected. And so if someone was holding this sign, which I just saw an hour ago at the parking meter, I really would not feel comfortable with that. And maybe the men in the room feel stronger or more comfortable, but I do think that this is an actual safety issue that if we continue to we can wordsmith that sign for months. And we are waiting and inviting more things to happen. You've seen all the comments on Brattleboro Parents Network. We have all seen them. We're putting the survey together to quantify so that we have the data. But I think a lot of people in here whom we may hear from tonight have all felt that feeling of unsafety. And we are here to protect the health and safety of all community members, including the panhandlers. Some are so inebriated they're going to fall and hurt themselves. So this isn't just about protecting the mainstream middle-class people. This is about elevating everyone in the community. And if we don't have the guts to put up a sign that educates people about what the rules are, and we're going to wait and invest time and energy into huge programs, and we can't make one step, I would be very, very, very disconcerted. Again, we're going to put these signs up all over town anyway, but we would really like them at the places that people are taking out their wallets and getting into their cars. We will put them up in all the restaurants. We probably can get the banks to put them at the ATMs because that's also private property. So it would be great if we could have the town support, the town government support, in taking this very small step forward in educating people.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we want to be just sure of, that the police is okay that we're writing, call the police.
He approved the copy before it came.
Right, but we haven't, this is the first time where some of us are saying it, I've seen it before. So I just want to make sure, and Chief Fitzgerald just got up and said that this is okay.
Right.
I mean, if I read you right.
That got a little bigger just then than it
Yeah,
needed to.
yeah.
Sorry, but it's
So
just, this
I just
kind
want
of
to make it
stuff-
clear that my comments were not trying to diminish the issue
Yeah.
at all. And in fact, I'm quite aware that as a man, I might have a different attitude, as happened to me, if we're talking about anecdotes. I saw a woman holding a cardboard sign, looking very sad. Could you give me some money? And she was sitting cross-legged, very peacefully, in front of or to the side of where you get your parking ticket. You might have seen her. I don't know how often she's there. But I thought to myself, well, am I going to say something to her? Am I going to be considering that when I see a sign like that, I could see somebody acting sort of, in a vigilante manner, calling the police, calling 911, because that's the first number on here, which is another issue, I think, but saying there's somebody asking for money. Is she asking for money, or is she just sitting there with a sign? There's all this nuance there that I want to be clear that if you're looking for town sanction on a sign, it's quite different from a merchant putting up a sign and giving an opinion about something. But we're here to represent the town, and we're supposed to be doing it in a legal, constitutional, and according to our very recent proclamation, compassionate way. That's why I've got a few issues with the current sign. So I object to your framing it around we can banter about. I mean, the language to me is very important. So I will be sort of looking at it carefully because I think it's very important. Okay.
It's
And
a
I-
draft. It's a draft.
And it's a perfectly fine draft, and I don't want to diminish any work you guys done. I'm very happy about it. But I'm also interested, and this leads me into my second question, what is the overlap between what the DBA and/or downtown concerned people, business merchants want to do, and what the town should be doing? That's a question we need to be looking at. Because something like the task force, something like a jobs program is quite concrete, and it doesn't have quite the moral leeway as this sign does at the moment. So.
Right. And there's and there are certain things that the town has a capability of doing that are different than what the merchants
Right.
can do.
Right.
So I think at a certain point, we're gonna have to get clarity on that, because we don't wanna hold the merchants back from doing what they wanna do. That's not our role. And I think we're both saying the same thing. There's a
Right.
certain role for the town, there's a role for merchants, there's a role for everybody, and sometimes they overlap and sometimes they're
Yeah.
not going to.
And as I tried to say when I opened this discussion at the first meeting, I wanted to try to ask people to make a distinction between disturbing events and what can really be controlled from a town perspective. In other words, you in your talk about what you saw tonight, you described several illegal acts. And so a sign about don't smoke weed and a sign about don't threaten people, I wouldn't approve that because everyone knows that's illegal. So I'm not going to approve spending, I won't vote for approving town money on something like that. But so we're trying to get to a place that addresses issues that are in the gray area of illegality while still respecting people's rights, I think, here. So it's not an easy discussion.
It looks pretty easy on here, but did you say this?
Oh, yeah, Stephanie.
Stephanie Bowden, Duo Restaurant. We had the
Oh,
merchants.
come closer.
Yeah, come closer.
We had the merchants meeting this morning. We have it the first Tuesday of every month, the TBA does. And so we brought this discussion up. And I wanted to voice that the merchants do want the town to state the obvious as a way of deterring it. And that feels very clear, that it's okay to say it's illegal to do something, and that feels that that's something that needs to be stated. And then the second thing is that I wouldn't say people around the room were that excited about hanging it in their business, that it doesn't feel that that's not where the panhandling is happening. So I think I feel confident in speaking from the meeting we had this morning that where the excitement came from was at cash locations.
Oh, Brandon, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense to have them in those locations. And I think, it does need to be wordsmithed. We know that, it's a draft. I think we can put a deadline. I mean, I don't think any project should be just open-ended, because we'll lose it, right? I do hear what Tim's saying very much. I think it had to come here because of where it wants to be hung, and that's how our involvement comes into it. And that's it, really. I mean, otherwise, the banks have a right to put it up at their ATMs. Y'all have a right to put it wherever you want to put it. I'm not against having a sign. I do want to make sure it's compassionate. I do think it's not a bad idea to remind people of what's going on. It might provide people some level of comfort if worded in a way. It might provide people some level of comfort to see that we are looking, like that we know something's going on, that we can't fix it all. We're working on things. We've got good initiatives. We're addressing it holistically. But in the meantime, we know what's going on. The sign is kind of like us standing there with the community. It's kind of like one of us is posted at that parking lot saying, we can't fix it all, but we're standing here. We noticed it. We heard you. And as trite as it sounds, we put up a sign. If that's the way that I'm hearing it. And I don't think it's, as far as town ownership of this kind of initiative, I don't think it's much more than that. You've got the jobs program initiative, Gunny's working on his initiative, the survey is going. This is just one thing that we're doing to show solidarity with the community. It does need to be worded correctly. Language is everything. Language coming from figures of authority, whether or not we're the real authority, that's a long discussion in this town, but people view us as authority. So language coming from being hung up in a town place, supposedly from people of authority, because they're not going to understand that it was a collaborative committee and blah, 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 needs to be done right. I'm just chiming in on all sides of the spectrum and giving my perspective on what I'm hearing from everybody.
John's going,
Where's my one?
I know. I am so far from being politically correct. It's not even funny. And I've thought about this, and I don't agree with Tim on this one. I'm sorry I don't. But I think we've sugarcoated this issue, and we keep trying to appease everybody, and I don't think in this situation that we can. This is all I've heard from people in the community for the last year, is not, and it's all overlapping. Chief and I agree with you on this, that the panhandling has to do with the drugs, has to do with the overdoses, has to do with, so it's all encompassing, and we just can't be talking about panhandling here without it getting into a lot of other different areas. So, and I know we're trying to be compassionate, but I'm sorry, I'm looking out for the well-being of the majority of the people in this town. And that's what I think our job is to do, is to look out for the town as a whole. And if we have a problem in a certain area and it's not pretty to talk about, and it's not, it's not fun, it has, it has to be dealt with. And we just keep pushing this under the table, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of just pushing these things under the table because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. My wife gets accosted all the time going into Taylor for flowers. And I'm sick of hearing that, and that sign really just hit home with me. I could be accosting you right now. It's a good thing I'm a good person. That's an awful sign to wave in somebody's face. And so I think at some point we have to draw the line in the sand and say, this is what we're going to do. And I know it's, we've got the Constitution behind them, and they have every right to ask for money. But we're also blind to the fact that there are so many agencies in this town where you can be fed, you can be clothed, you can be everything. You don't have to panhandle in this town. You don't. There's way too many agencies to take care of you. And so we're brushing up, we're really kind of not looking at the issue of the drug problem. And to me, it's rampant, and we've got to do something about it. And I'm going to be full force on getting more task force down here, more money for that, and it's just not Brattleboro. This is a problem that's happening all over the country, and we're not going to fix it. But I'll be damned if we're going to close our eyes to it anymore. I'm done with closing our eyes to this problem. And you know, I know I'm not politically correct, and I'm sorry, but you know, I hear more of that than I do of, well, I know it's hard for people, and you know, they're panhandling for a reason. Okay, well, that's fine. I'm getting sick of hearing from the people that are saying, I'm not coming to Brattleboro anymore. I am not going to walk downtown anymore. I am not going to go into these stores. I am sick of going down by the transportation center. I fear for my life going to the co-op. And these are people that are sane people that are saying this. And I'm done with it. I don't know what to do about it, but...
Can I just say one thing, John?
Yep.
That's why what we're doing.
I know.
So I don't want a
I know.
blanket statement that we're shoving this under
I
the
know we're
table.
not, but we keep going over these issues and nothing gets done.
But that's why what we're
Right.
doing. And I think
Right.
we've, as a group, you know, at the last meeting, said we want to deal with this.
Right.
So
Well, I want it out there that I really want to deal with.
No, and I think there's a commitment to
And I know
deal
all
with
of us
it.
do.
No, everybody.
I've only been on the board 6 months. How long have you been on?
Right.
A long time. Yeah.
Right.
It's just,
Right. So I just want to say that we're not kicking it down this time, and we're going to do
That's right.
whatever we
Right.
can. But I
do it
also want to say,
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing. I don't want this to get lost, that Brattleboro is a great community.
It is.
We have a great downtown.
We do.
Does it have problems? Just like everybody else. But I don't want us to lose sight of that one of the reasons we should be, you know, fixing this is because of the quality of life that we have here and the quality downtown, the quality merchants and restaurant owners. So I don't want us to paint our entire town and our entire downtown with this broad brush, but it is something that we have to deal with.
Right, I don't think we are. And this is why
Right.
I'm glad that there was this collaborative effort with
Right.
everybody that's sitting here tonight, the parents, the merchants,
Right.
us. You know, David and Brandy
Yeah.
taking the lead on getting to these meetings. And so
Yeah.
I just think we
Yeah.
got to keep it going.
Yep. David.
Well, speaking of getting to these meetings, the people that were at the meeting where we drafted this already heard this story. But before the meeting started, I was home canning peaches, peeling peaches and canning and listening to the radio. It was New Hampshire Public Radio, and they were talking about what I think it was what Manchester did. And the thing, there's a lot of good information, but the thing I took away with it was they said anything that anybody does, it needs to be done respectfully, and it needs to help. It needs to be helpful. And it's not you talked about appeasing, and that's obviously that doesn't work. What we need to do is engage people, and there are tons. I mean, we're going to do things tonight. The town's going to do things. This is going to get put up around town. Steps are being taken, but ultimately we've got to we're going to have to engage all the counselors in this community to help with this process, and probably for not being paid, probably as volunteers. We're going to have to engage all the educational institutions so that people can get themselves up and out, because that's part of the process. The Career Center, the Adult Basic Ed, the community college, and technical college. Everybody that has anything to do with housing, anybody that has everything, or everybody that has anything to do with jobs or food security. It's all the agencies, all these people and organizations are going to have to be drawn into this process. But I agree completely that, and then there's the town role. And if Gunny needs more support, we're doing the budget, and we'll give you more staff to help with the work that needs to be done. But, well, I guess I can't speak for everybody on that one, but I think there's a commitment to make sure we've got what we need in place. But but this is an opportunity to take a step. I don't think there's any question that it's done respectfully. I don't think there's any question that it's helpful. If there could be more numbers on the bottom, or if there could be a little thing with a stack of cards with phone numbers for people to call that needed help, or phone numbers for people to take, or cards for people to take and give to people that are panhandling them, that would make it even better. But I think this is an excellent first start. It's coming from the community. It was well considered. And, I agree with John. We need to make concrete steps while we're doing all of these other things that have to be done. Things that we can do as a town and things that the community has to help with. And if we keep that focus that this is one thing, there are many other things that are going on and they're going to keep going on, then we've got a chance of having an impact and solving the problem, or at least alleviating it a lot. But the problem is poverty. The problem is lack of hope. The problem is lack of any vision of a positive future that puts people into these conditions, and that's what we have to fix. And we're not going to
That's
get.
part of the problem. I don't think, again.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more to it.
There's more to it
That's the way I see it, yeah.
than just poverty. I mean.
So I think, I would like to hear from a lot more people, from a lot more townspeople about this in particular, and any other ideas they have before, but I intend to move it and see if we can get it passed and adopted and figure out what the regulations are.
Diana, and just please say your name so that the viewing audience.
My name is Diana Vander, and I joined this group, this committee, because I'm a resident in town. And I'm proud to be a resident in town. I'm a senior citizen, I'm a woman, obviously, and I live here. I pay rent, I pay taxes, I eat, I shop, and I cannot tell you incessantly how many people come up to me and tell me how difficult it is to visit this town, to shop in this town, to be here. This is our merchants. This is a tourist town, and people come and visit. And I will tell you one very striking story of my sitting at a restaurant, a very fine restaurant, talking with folks next to me at the bar. They were visiting from somewhere else on their way through Brattleboro, here for the weekend, staying at the Latchis, eating well, and saying they would never come back here again. That it was just too much trouble walking around, too much difficulty dealing with, seeing this and dealing with it. And then the clincher came when the woman said to me, "You live here?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I'd never let my mother live in this town." That was an eye-opener for me. I adore this town. I want to make this town, help to make this town better. And if we can start with something, we can kick the can down the road. It's poverty, it's all kinds of things. I had a business here in this town. And I know this town well, and I've lived here for over 30 years. We can do something. We can start small, and we can do some things that will help. I have some questions, Peter, around the success measures of the Portland and Albuquerque projects. And how did they measure success? And how would we measure success?
Matt?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I've actually asked for data from Portland. I haven't received it, but I expect to. Surely they've been very responsive and helpful. And how many people have been served and what it costs to operate the program are two very important pieces of information I don't have. Albuquerque's on such a scale, I'm not sure that's going to provide anything really relevant to us. But even with Portland being 5 times larger, I think it's relevant. It's in our region, and it's on a more of a relatable scale. We could just, sort of downsize expectations to what it might be here. I think money's going to be an issue for the jobs program, frankly. So I'm optimistic with what I've learned about the potential that such a program would have for getting at root causes. But it's not going to come free, and we've got a number of other initiatives we want to pursue. We've talked about some other things during the course of the year. It's going to be a really challenging budget cycle for us this time to go through the aspirations that we have as a community to get doing some things we haven't been doing and do more and better some things we have been doing and find all the cash that's necessary to support it.
And so importantly, to whatever we do, that we do it, even if it's small, that we do it with commitment and that we don't drop it. So I agree with you completely, John. We can't, it's not just, it's a big issue in this town.
It is, it's very big.
And I think we need to get going. We really need to get going. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public? Yeah, please state your name and where you're from.
Sorry, but Elizabeth Clausen, Brattleboro resident for 7 years. When I first moved here, it was described as an artistic and bohemian town, which it is, but it's also a very loving and caring town, which I appreciate coming from a small community. But we're enabling these panhandlers. With that open-heartedness and goodness, I carry with me a copy from the Reformer of Where to Get Help. And when I am approached by someone for money, I hand this form to them. And I was told one time, I don't need food, I don't need clothing, I'm an addict. I need money for drugs. And we are enabling, like an overzealous parent trying to give their child everything. It's got to come back to us, the public, not them, the panhandlers. We're the one that's making it easy for them. We need to educate us and say, there are lots of places you can go to get help. Don't do this. Don't help them along with their addiction. Like you said, Mr. Allen, there are so many places above and beyond, and they are wonderful. I've dropped lots of things off at some of these places, and these people are so respectful and caring. So it's not the food, it's not the basic needs, it's not poverty, it's the drugs. And we have got to stop paying them to take them.
Thank you. Was there someone else in the public? Yeah, please come up.
My name's Marta Birnbaum. I'm a Brattleboro resident, 10 or 11 years. And you talk about having a box out in the street that could fund some unknown charity. Why not create this box that supports the panhandler shuttle bus idea and allow the public to feed money into that, which then creates the mysterious money that we need to create this program, and it would stop people on the street from giving money to the people who are having the drug problems. We're solving a lot of issues right there with just, educating the townspeople to take the money that they have that they want to give to charity to put in the box to support this new program.
Yep, that's
like
it.
all right there.
That's actually the idea of the thing. Is
Well, I
to
know, but
give it
you
there.
talk about this box, but then you're like, but we could give it to Groundworks. Yes, we could give it to Groundworks, and I'm sure Groundworks, I give a lot to Groundworks. But I'm saying this box could be specifically, don't give to panhandlers, put it in this box for the bus.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, please come up.
Nick Nickerson, Brattleboro. I'm an old voc rehab counselor from the 1960s, so I'd like to see the chief include a vocational rehabilitation counselor on his team. I'd also like to ask the town managers if they're aware of any substantial movement to enlarge the largely closed state mental hospitals in America.
That's a question
Yeah.
we can't answer.
Okay.
But thank you for your other comment. Does anyone else in the public have a comment? I think the issue is where to go with this flyer and how we want to, how we go about making sure that we're comfortable with the language of it, so when it goes on whatever town things, the town manager can tell us what it can go on and what the size is. This could take up an entire pay and display box. Who we work with on that, just to make sure we're all, because there's a couple things that I see too that might make it a little bit better. I don't know, that's my own opinion. So how do we want to move forward with this? Can we give suggestions? Can we give suggestions? I don't know if we give them, who we give suggestions to.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can forward the suggestions to me and I'll
Okay.
communicate them to our
Okay.
committee, which
Okay.
includes a lot of people right here.
Okay.
Can you mark the, actually mark
Yeah.
copies?
And we
Yeah.
all know it looks like a co-op ad because the co-op did it for free. So we all know that.
Yeah, because maybe what we can try to do is, our next meeting is in 2 weeks, have this so that we can have it where we feel comfortable, and then the town manager can let us know what the options are of where to put it. And how we would, because obviously we don't want to put it on something where people can just like rip it off or stick other stuff on top of it.
Laminate it,
Yeah.
and put tape,
Yeah, it will happen. I mean, people will rip them off.
Yeah.
We'll have to continually go back and put them up.
Yeah.
And just to address one of Tim's comments earlier, that the town we're not asking the town for any financial investment on this. This is, everyone who's involved in this committee is willing to design, print, laminate, hang. We just need permission.
I
Before
thought it
we-
was a sign. I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought it was a sign you wanted to put up, like a metal sign.
Oh, no, just the-
No. Way lower budget.
So it's a flyer.
Yeah.
But before we put it off for a couple more weeks, I think I'd rather hear what your concerns are, because if they're substantive, then that's
Yeah.
an issue that the committee has to resolve. If it's a
Sure.
panhandling may become or can become disorderly
No,
change,
they're
that's,
just-
not very good.
Right.
You can't do a group growth here.
Right. I want to,
Yeah, but I don't want to spend 2 weeks if it's just a
Well-
grammatical change.
well, there's one grammatical change, as far as I know, 911 is one word, not
That's
9-11.
right.
The one thing
And
too.
First Amendment needs to be capitalized.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to go into this because we could take forever wordsmithing, but I would think when you say if you're panhandling, please contact one of our service agencies below and your needs will be met. It's not the town, the chamber's job is not like a social service agency. So I think David mentioned maybe, you know what I mean? I don't know how you word it. I mean, if people call us, we can say, call 211.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
But-
think it's supposed to, and maybe that needs to be clarified how it rolled.
You know what I mean?
That 211 is the deal.
Right, it's the 211. The
Yeah.
logos at the bottom are more, this sign was brought to you by
Right.
Yeah, maybe like.
these organizations. So that's a, thank you for
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Those are my big things, is just making sure people know who to contact. Oh, yeah.
I'm very much in favor of doing this, but I do want to make it clear, and I want to be, it's the one time where I'm not sure how to not make people mad.
Gotta give that up.
Here we go.
There's a lot of people in town and coming.
No, I mean what I'm about to say.
Comes with the
What I'm
job.
about to say might rub some people the wrong way, but I just need to have the freedom to say it. And that is, I am pro this sign, but offending tourists is lower on my list than the fact that some of our community members don't feel safe. So I just want to, so when I hear tourist town, I know that is true, and it is especially true for some of our businesses, but I really want to make sure that when we're addressing the town, we're thinking first of the people that live here.
Right, yes. Well, I'll just say that.
Sorry, Stephanie.
No. All the businesses downtown need every single person that walks
Yeah.
in.
Exactly.
Every
You're the one I
single
didn't want to make mad.
No, I want to appease you that it is okay to meet tourists where they're at, and it's okay to meet residences.
Okay.
And that's what business community tries to do every single day.
Right.
Because if we get one of those people not walking in the doors, that's what makes or breaks our day. So it's okay that tourists are great and that we embrace them and show them Vermont love. I don't think one is better than the other.
Right.
And I know this is not going to be popular with John or Peter, but I have no problem, and I don't know what amount it would be, but to say, a little bit of financial backing on this. I have no problem with asking for that.
Maybe administrative support and copying.
Yeah.
Or if there are signs that we need the town to
Something.
make the signs.
Something, it
Well,
just,
I think we need to.
Right.
We need to. we need to know what it is when you're talking
Exactly.
about funding. I think
Right.
Peter's going to come back to us and talk about the
Exactly.
job.
Yes.
So before we get like out of control, we need to know
Well,
what it is that we're
right.
thinking about funding, you know?
Also, tourist or not, the social media sites are commonly used. People go on to Brattleboro Family Network and they say, hey, is this a safe town for me to bring my family? And overwhelming results are, no, don't do it. There's drug problems. This town used to be nice. That's so sad because I would love to have new families come into this town. And when they're being pushed away by this activity, it's enough to, make me want to leave too.
I want to try something here to see if we can make some movement, because I think we've suggested a couple of grammatical changes and the logos on the bottom, and that the important thing is to get to make sure the dial 211 is there. I'd like us to at least tentatively approve this and ask Michelle and the other people on that committee to work up a more final draft with it doesn't look like a go-up ad, and come to Peter and work with Peter or Patrick or whoever Peter designates to figure out where they can go, how they can go, any of the nuts and bolts or regulations that need to be done,
I would support that.
rather than wait for 2 weeks and look at the next draft.
I would support that.
I just want to say, we have foliage coming, we have September foliage coming up. And the more we postpone this,
Well, that's what David is saying.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm in favor of
We're on the
this motion.
same, we're on the same page here.
Yep.
Yes, please come up.
Hi, my name is Fiona Therese, and I live in the section of West Brattleboro, and I'm relatively new, and hearing all of this is very a little bit nerve-wracking, but also it's sort of making me think that I want to help these people, but I don't know what to do in some cases, because I know that some of them are addicted, but I see them and I just really want to help them, and I want to help them get better, but I don't know how.
Thank you.
Good way to feel.
Thank you.
And that's a big dilemma. I mean, I think we all fight.
That's the dilemma.
That's
do
the yin and the yang, or where you find the happy medium. And thank you for your input on that. But I think that's what we're all trying to do. Brattleboro, like Kate said, Brattleboro is a great town. It's a wonderful town, or we wouldn't be having this meeting.
That's right.
So-
That's right. That's right. And one thing, I just want to say one hopeful thing to people. I work in an office that deals every single day with tourists. People are coming from all over the world.
Yeah.
And I hear good things from these people. We had people from Australia that came in today, love this place.
Yeah.
So they're not everybody who comes here is seeing a bad side.
No.
There are so many people that come here because of our culture, our politics. Had an interesting conversation today with these people from Australia. So I just want us to keep that in mind too, that
It is a good place.
that it is a good place. People come
It
here
is.
for a reason, and we, as you all said, we want people to continue to live here and to people to continue to come here because we have so many good things to offer, and we just need to make it so we all feel comfortable.
So do we need a motion?
So is the action plan on this, as we said, do some wordsmithing and allow the town manager to take what we all just said and work with the group? And
Peter,
then,
you okay with that, or?
I mean,
Yeah, I
does
could
that-
work with that. For the sign, especially in the context of it being, we can provide sort of feedback that says at
Right.
baseline, this is what the town can post at the town public places.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that based on the conversation tonight, that's going to be also wording that the privately organized group is going to be able to support, so there would be one sign that would be around at various locations.
Yeah.
I think we can work with that. The offer has been made that this can happen at no cost to the taxpayers, which, all due respect, I think
I
that's
know.
important,
No, it
because
is.
otherwise,
Right.
we've got procedure to follow, and that won't help us
Right.
move quickly.
Right.
So I think as it relates to the sign, there is an opportunity here, and I hear a majority of select board members saying that they'd like to be nimble and move quickly with the group from the community that has expressed that desire. There is definitely some modification that needs to be made to the sign. We can do that and get moving with that piece. When the board is ready to move back to the other 4 topics that were brought up back at the July 11th meeting, I would like to make sure that I've got some clear direction from you about those that are more completely and officially within the town's area of responsibility.
Do we still want to discuss those, or?
I don't think we need to discuss them at great length. I want to just make sure I understand next
What we
steps.
want.
Okay.
All right, and so at the next meeting, will you just give us an update on what happened to this and
Sure.
where's it gonna go?
Absolutely.
And how's it gonna be so it just doesn't look like
Yes.
somebody put a piece of tape and stuck something?
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? I think it needs to look nice if it's on our,
We'll work on those details and we'll circle back to you to
It
advise
has
you how
to
it
look
turned out.
nice.
So, Michelle,
if the nicer it looks, it'll, I mean, if people just see some slapped on there, they'll just think, oh, it's, you know, and you need it to look official.
so this is something you guys can get on?
We are, yes.
Good. Good.
And we'll make it so that you can read it at night too.
Oh, close.
Promises.
I can't wait to see that plan.
Well, in fact, you can see it.
Yeah. Okay, so do we all feel comfortable with this? I don't know if we need to make a motion because I think we're all on the same side. Do you feel comfortable with it, David?
Yeah, we know what's happening.
We know what's going to happen. Okay, so let's go through, from the top, the other 4 so we can give the town manager direction.
May I tell you where I think we are, just in the
Yeah.
interest of time, and then you can either
Yeah.
say, yeah, that's right, or have a
Yep.
discussion around them?
Yep.
So the survey we heard is getting polished and is going to be handled by the folks in the community.
Yep.
And that will, I believe, also get pushed out before the next select board meeting.
Yep.
That's what it sounded like.
Yep, so there's no select board
So
action.
there's not select board
necessary.
action around that. We're not going to be responsible for the
That's
survey. The town has to be responsible for the jobs program and the deposit boxes. Both of those are going to take some time. The deposit boxes could move more quickly, but I want to just circle back to you on this question of whether you care one way or the other about the potential confusion of having it be one box for the multiple purposes. If you do, we'll move a little more slowly, but with good purpose, to make sure that we've got a companion box we can put up there that's going to be, clearly identifiable as the place for people to make a donation, rather than giving cash directly to someone who's asking for money.
Yep.
I care a little
yeah.
bit, but I could be talked out of it if you told me that it's not a big deal, but maybe for citizens, it might be easier to know, like,
They're two separate
They're
things.
two separate
separate
things, yeah.
I think so too. I'm
feels
just
like-
asking to make sure that we're on the same page about
Because
that.
it's 2 different purposes.
Yeah, okay. And I'm seeing nodding up and down the dais, so we'll say, yes, we'll work on that. We'll come back to you when we have a plan. And then the task force, which is already formed and beginning its work, and I'm sure is gonna, be a fluid kind of situation as you get your sea legs out there. There may be some changes to exactly who's doing the work and how they're doing the work, but it's begun. I think it's important that it's already begun.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
one quick thing on the jobs program. And this will just be a quick, and this is just my thought. I just think that we're dealing with cities that are so much bigger than we are. And that I just don't know how that jobs program could work in a town of 12,000. That's all.
So my question, I think that's a fair point. We are talking about something that's
Right, that
quite
is-
different scale.
It is.
And so my question for the board is, do you want us to further pursue that? If you do, I would go back to Portland, metaphorically.
Right.
Maybe physically, we'll see. But we would stay linked well with Portland. They've been very responsive. They're going to give, I think, more relevant advice to us than Albuquerque would. There are some other places around the country that have done it, but Portland seems to be in a situation very similar to ours. They had tried some other things. They weren't satisfied with the outcome. It was just a year ago right now, they said, let's try this jobs thing. It looks like it's working in Albuquerque. And by springtime, they had a program. Now, they also identified some funding sources that are not necessarily just going to be right at hand for us. But that's why I think if I get some more information around what that might look
Yeah,
like
I'd have
here
to hear
between
about
now and our
that.
budget process,
Yep.
there's a discussion we can have during November, December, January around that.
Yeah.
Just my quick knee-jerk reaction is that I don't see how how it would fit into our.
And my slower long-term look at it, reaction is that it shouldn't be just a jobs program. You say, come on, we'll give you work, we'll give you $50. But there also should be contact with for maybe Voc Rehab.
Right.
Or maybe the community college, or maybe adult basic ed, or maybe mental health, or maybe the hospital. I mean, it's gonna have to have a referral component. It can't just be somebody picking somebody up and giving them a rake. I mean, it can, but it won't help.
And for me, the one thing I get really sort of ambivalent about is we're putting together a program for panhandlers, yet we have a lot of other people in this community that would like jobs, or they're homeless. Do you know what I mean? So I think we sort of have to.
I don't have them separated in my mind. When I say that, I'm talking about the homeless people that also have signs or don't.
Yeah. So I think the upshot is we all want a little bit more information.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'll include in that when I bring it back to you, because I think it's going to be really important in addressing that last point, is there are really successful examples of day labor centers that municipalities have partnered with nonprofits to address this on a much broader community scale, where it's not targeting a particular population, it's just making day labor a safe, available option for people who are really at the end of their rope.
That's great.
It is great, it's also expensive.
Yeah.
And so aspiring to do it on that scale rather than make a used van available to collect a few people who are showing interest in doing a day's work for some pay and connecting them with the people who can put them to work, that there's a simplicity to how they're doing it in Portland and in Albuquerque that makes it something we could move quickly with. A full-blown day labor center where people are going to get, you're going to register potential employees and you're going to register potential employers and you're going to do matching every single day is a huge undertaking that I'm certain as town of Brattleboro we're not going to be able to pull off. Could we coordinate some resources in the community who might be able to work with each other around something like that? Maybe, and we could look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I have.
Good.
If we could look at the quick and dirty numbers, but also know that I personally would like to see what the other numbers look like
The
too.
larger scale.
Yep, I'd like to see both.
And also explore philanthropy options. We've had some recommendations and proposals that we can explore on this too.
And we may not.
But I feel like we have all this paper left.
Right.
Well,
And we'll keep
semantics.
people posted on what meeting agenda this is all going to be on.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's going to be 2 weeks from now. But it'll be sometime.
Can I make
Figure
two
out.
quick comments?
Yeah.
The item that I'm most excited about is Gunny's task force, our chief's task force. I mean, you've done amazing work on this, I think, and I know it's early stages and everything, but I believe in such a small town. I mean, I've talked to enough panhandlers myself to know that I see them over and over again, and they're real people with real stories, and we can get to what can stop the behavior, I think. But in a small town like this, I think we can do that with a small group like you've put together, and it might be much more effective than a sign. And I'm not dissing the sign. A lot of the energy went. Or a survey.
You're not excited about that?
Yeah. Go monkey or whatever that is. But, so I just want to, just say that I think that's, for me, the most promising course of action that we have coming up. And I just want to make one really quick comment about the overall, because you're closing out this discussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's really easy to kind of get into these really emotional moments where we have these experiences and we shouldn't discount them, and they're bad when tourists come or residents experience these terrible things, and they do happen. But I think we should also open our minds up to the idea that we are having this conversation because we live in a community that wants to not sweep everything under the rug. I mean,
It's true.
speaking of what we missed in August, I went to another amazing event in August. It was the Ride for Heroes over at the Brattleboro Retreat. And this is for the Uniform Services Program, okay? And what they do is provide counseling to people in any uniform who are traumatized by events and are experiencing PTSD, etc., other traumatic results or symptoms of traumatic events. And at that event, you may have heard about it in the paper, Windham County Sheriff Keith Clark got up and said, you know, I just went through this program. I walked in and I said, I need help. And I think it's pretty neat, pretty great, that we live in a community where the person who is our Windham County Sheriff, who's running again, by the way, just was open about going to a program about his mental health. And I think that shows a level of commitment to not sweeping things under the rug, not kicking it down the road. And please remember, everyone, including the Brattleboro Reformer and all the media outlets, that just because Brattleboro, Vermont wants to address all these issues and are talking about it, doesn't mean they are not happening in every single community in the United States. If they're not, you're not looking hard enough, or, you know, I don't know what's happening. The police are just knocking a couple heads and kicking them across town lines. But that's not what we want to do. We want to address the issue, help people, and help our merchants be successful, help our residents feel safe. And that's why it's getting all this energy. But, you know, we're working on it, and I think we should feel lucky to live in a community that's not turning our back.
Well said, Tim. Well said.
Is there any last comments from the board? We're going to take a 5-minute break. So we'll come back at 8:30.
And then we'll adjourn.
You've got this dream in your mind.
I know, I've got
It's
this.
not happening.
It's not happening.
Hi, we're back and we are on to new business, and the first item is our monthly financial report. And I guess John O'Connor, our finance director,
Thank you,
is going to
Kate.
do it.
So we're 1 month into the fiscal year, 8.3% of the way through the year. And hard to spot any trends at this point. But the first month, our expenditures were at 11.2%, but those included $288,360 in semi-annual insurance payments, $130,765 in human service payments, and those are annual payments, and $292,058 in lease and note payments. So if we prorate those, the expenditures would really be running at 7.6%. Utilities expenditures were at 10%, parking was at 9.2%, and again, if we prorate the semi-annual insurance payments in the utilities fund, they'd be down to 8.8%. So both of them are a little bit over, but again, we're only 1 month into the year, so there's no sense in getting concerned about that at this point. The loan report shows we have $4,042,038 in outstanding loans. 4 of the loans had payments that were overdue. 1 loan is in default and fully reserved. Program income report shows that we have $449,806 in available funds for additional grants and loans as of the end of July. And finally, our grant report contains a variety of information on 34 active grants and 13 grants in the application process. So that's the financial report for the month of July. And unless you have any specific questions, that will complete my report.
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
I have sort of a broader question. Well, John, you said you have 13 grants in the application process. You mean, are they for grants or are they for loans?
Grants.
So there are 13 people asking for outright grants?
13, yeah.
Yeah, but those are our grant applications.
Right.
Those aren't people
not
applying to us.
Those are ours.
Oh, not
Yeah.
people asking for the 449,000?
Town of Brattleboro requesting grants.
Yeah,
Okay.
other people's money.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm around on the 449,000. Here I go again. That's 11, if you look at the 4 million and the 449, it's 11% of what we have out and available. And one of the things that, in talking to people about that have had grants and used them effectively, one of the things I hear a lot is that, or have had the loans. I hear a lot is that, it's really great that, to get this loan, it's really helpful. But loans aren't necessarily something that people look at as an attractive option, particularly if it's a small business. And so I wondered if the board would be interested in having the Small Business Loan Committee look at developing some sort of a seed grant option to actually provide grants to businesses that are looking to expand that either can't or don't want to take on debt, or that would actually maybe be hurt by taking on debt. It's hard to know exactly what the effect is going to be, but I said, as for a lot of businesses, that's really not a very good option, not a very appealing option. So, I'm thinking about that. I wouldn't be surprised if I sat down with the rest of the committee and learned very quickly it's a terrible idea. But I'd like to, if, unless you already know that it's a terrible idea, I'd like to if the board is interested, I'd like to maybe have a committee look into just doing some grants to support, seed money basically for small local businesses. We don't get it back.
That's the one thing.
But again, we get
Depletes our
When you're looking at a financial guy that's going, that's not a good idea.
But
So.
I think, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, John, what the monthly income is from the 4 million that are out. But the committee could look at that as well and say, well, we've got this much coming in every month that goes in and makes the 449 larger. Maybe we could do 1 month's worth of income as a grant to somebody that's really worthy and would benefit from it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to suggest, before the board tries to tackle that from the more philosophical
Right.
policy perspective, that there are some strings attached to that source of funds because of
Right.
how it came to us through the
Right.
CDBG program. And maybe at your convenience in the office, we could huddle around what our choices are with those funds. And then if that isn't sufficiently flexible to do the kind of seed granting that you're thinking of, we could talk about what other sources are around that might support that need, so that if you do bring it back to the board, and if the board does say, yeah, they want to see the Small Business Loan Committee look at that, you'd be looking at it knowing
What's
what
possible.
money might, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yep.
Yeah. Sounds like a
Does that
good
work?
idea.
Okay.
Yeah, and Dave, I can tell you how much in July, if you look at the loan report, you can see that we took in $4,673 in principal and $1,420 in interest.
So about 5,000, a little over 5,000 a month. Not very much.
That's a lot.
Does anyone else have any questions? I have two.
Okay?
First of all, when are we going to get the year-end finance report for the
Next
last fiscal
meeting.
year?
We'll have the
Okay.
numbers, I think, tomorrow.
Okay. Excellent. That's really good.
And the indications are that it's going to be better than what I expected it to be.
Well, that is always good to hear.
And the second thing is, I, believe it or not, read all the memos in the back of the notebook. And you reference, we're still waiting for about $96,000 worth of money from the state, from FEMA, dating back to 2014. Is it the state doesn't have the money to give us, or they actually have the money and they're just not giving it to us, or do we not know?
My understanding is the holdup is with FEMA.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Because now I'm thinking we're never going to get the money.
No.
Not this month, for sure.
Brownie's doing a great job.
It's not uncommon for FEMA to close out those files
Yeah.
literally 6 and 8 and 10
Okay.
years after the disaster.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
So where's the money? Is it a separate fund, like, or does it show up somewhere? Like when we get it, where's it going to go? We're all going to be
Yes.
excited because we got all this money.
Right, it shows up and we have a Tropical Storm Irene fund. And also some of the monies due to us are in the utilities fund.
Okay.
for projects that affected the wastewater plant,
That we've already paid for.
paid for it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so maybe in this lifetime.
Yeah, so we've already recognized the revenue because we've done the work, and it's just sitting out there as a receivable, and we're waiting to get paid.
Yeah.
We'll get that check when the bridge is built to Hinsdale.
John, it's going to be built.
I was like, wow, we're gonna get it soon then.
Okay. All right, does anybody else on the board have any questions? Does anyone in the public have any questions about the monthly financial report? Thank you, John.
You're welcome, Kate.
He's out of here.
I am out of here.
Next,
See you, John.
All right, John.
You betcha.
next up is our ordinance amendments, which deal with parking and speeding, or speed limit. And this is a first reading, which means we're not making any decisions tonight, but we'll have a first reading. Then the next select board meeting, we have a second reading and a public hearing, and then we will make our decision. That being said, I think it's going to be Patrick that lays out what these two things are. And if we have to actually read something, will you tell me if it's, because we are doing a reading? I'm assuming we read all the stuff that's not crossed out, but you tell me.
You know, after consultation with Attorney Fisher over the years, it's been made pretty clear that a genuine word-for-word reading of the ordinance change is not necessary.
Okay, right.
Rather, a full and open discussion of what's being proposed and a recitation of the specific ordinances which are going to be changing. So just as you indicated, the process of changing Brattleboro's Code of Ordinances begins with a first reading. There are 4 separate changes being proposed this evening, all to Appendix C. I'll enumerate them for the record. That is to Article 1, Section 16-87, loading and unloading zones. Article 2, Section 16-100, no parking areas. Article 3, Section 16-110, on-street metered parking areas. And Article 4, Section 16-46B, 35 mile per hour speed zones. So rather than reading through literally word for word the ordinance changes, they are in the backup materials for the board. What I'd like to do is just sort of describe for you the changes that are being proposed and how they will change circumstances in the 3 areas where we see them applying, and that being to Elliot Street, to Church Street, and Vernon Street. There's a map which has been included in the board's packet. I have several copies if anyone's interested, and you can circulate them to sort of follow along. What the map does not show you is existing conditions. What it does show you is what we hope to achieve at the Elliott Street and Church Street neighborhood. So I'll just discuss briefly what's happening. As you turn right onto Elliott Street from Elm Street, right in front of the old laundromat, I believe now it's a music venue, are 4 metered parking areas, parking spaces. Those areas cannot continue to exist because they are space which will be occupied by the turning radius of the fire trucks as they exit Spring Street onto Elliott Street. And so those need to be decommissioned, and the ordinance changes being proposed would eliminate those. In their place, a total of 7 new parking metered spaces will occur just to the east of that, beginning just east of the driveway to the music venue. While we're at this location, we're going to take the opportunity to eliminate some permanent loading zones which exist out in front of Kips and McNeil Brewery. And what we're going to do is replace those with sort of temporary loading zones which exist in several places throughout the downtown by virtue of a hood on the meter from 6 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon. And those hours we've confirmed with the local businesses would be adequate for their loading and unloading needs. And then as we progress into the evening hours, those spaces can serve as regular metered parking spaces to support visitors to the downtown. So we'll just be moving 4 spaces, adding 3, and making a slight alteration to the loading zone. That's all on Elliott Street. As Peter noted earlier, there's going to be 3 metered spaces added to the west side of Church Street, just above a bulb out, which is a planned future improvement for where Church Street meets Elliot Street, and that's being undertaken, to protect pedestrians and vehicular traffic. And what the town would like to do at this time is to put in place the ordinance amendment such that when this improvement is constructed, we can put the meters in and move straight away to metered parking at that location. Are there any questions on the map or those particular ordinance amendments? If not, the final section to be amended in the ordinance would address the speed of traffic on Vernon Street, particularly from Royal Road to the terminus of the town's jurisdiction on Route 142. And as the board may recall, back in March, a request was made to change the speed limit. That concept was taken to traffic safety where it was reviewed and approved. And so the ordinance amendment is brought forward to you this evening to change the speed limit in that section.
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
I do have a question that's probably not related to this vote, but just about this general reconstruction of the
Yeah.
corner. Is that all right? Or-
Because I was going to ask the same, probably unrelated questions, so go right ahead.
Okay. Well,
So I guess it's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
how do you know what question? Anyway.
Well, because I was going to ask about that same thing.
Okay. Well, I love that we're able to reduce that giant stretch. I walk down through there all the time, and it's really scary when people are going a little too fast and they're, so I
Or
think.
if you're waiting for them to walk across, it takes forever to get across.
Right, and wheelchairs, it's really bad.
Yeah.
But what I'm wondering is, I'm always flummoxed when I'm coming down Church Street walking. Doesn't matter anything. Either side, I'm always thinking we need a crosswalk. Because I know there's a crosswalk way down here, but if you're coming down Church Street and you want to be on the other side of Elliot, shouldn't there be a crosswalk on, I wouldn't care which side really, but
To get across Elliot.
get across Elliot.
We should look at that rather than address that this evening because there's traffic engineering consideration. There is a curve, there's a little bit of elevation change there, and there's a curve, and it should be reviewed in the field, and we should get some professional advice about whether we can safely add one there.
I didn't think it was something for tonight, but I just want to throw it out there.
Sure.
And get it out.
Traffic safety could take a look at that.
Good, I serve on that committee.
Yes, you did. Good.
All right, thanks. Was that what you were gonna?
Well, no, my question was, I've never heard about this before.
Yep.
Is this like a whole new thing?
It is a whole new thing
Okay.
that we looked at because of this ordinance. So because of the
Okay.
change that was made at Spring Street, which had to be made in order for the fire station to function properly, it's been always known that that would be a part of this project. And then the change in the parking that follows along from that, it got us looking at that, and we just said, geez, this is the time to, get a drawing done by an engineer of how we would safe that up
Right.
if we can come up with the funds. Now that we've got a drawing for it, we'll either propose it to you as part of the capital plan, or we'll go seek a grant for it, or in some other way try to get it accomplished sooner than later.
I'm glad to see
This was-
those parking spaces back on the west side.
This was brought up before, wasn't it? The fact of moving from TJ Buckley's?
That was.
Oh, that was, I'm
Okay,
talking about
yes.
the
But
rewrite.
the Church Street narrowing
that.
at that intersection is
Yeah.
new.
Yeah, because part of what Tim is saying, if we're already having, and I know this is not what we're supposed to be talking about, but I'm gonna say it
Right.
anyway. We have like the little pavers here, whatever. If you're gonna eventually put a crosswalk, it would be good to know before you put all these things in.
Absolutely, and we would.
Yeah.
That additional piece of traffic engineering can be done,
Whatever.
So-
in the days ahead. Whereas, it's going to be months or years before we actually build the improvements.
Oh, okay, so it's not like we're doing this tomorrow.
So, Peter, we couldn't take this out of the building fund that we have now for the police fire?
Potentially we could, but we'd need a cost estimate on the job, and you'd need to weigh that against, other potential uses for that last couple $100,000.
Because it seems like this should be on a fast track then, just to kind of
Finish off that area.
To finish off that area.
Yeah, so it's not torn up again.
So it's not- we're not-
Torn up for-
Well, that's
Get
fair.
into it
So
again.
let me ask the full board, would you like us to address that as a third item with the advisory committee when we have the advisory committee meeting
Yeah.
sometime in the next couple of months?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Get an estimate.
Okay, will do.
That'd be great.
And you think we could, well, you'd have to tell us if we could spend that kind of money on a road, sidewalk thing.
We'll look at that question.
Okay.
And can we do some of that in-house?
You-
The way we did?
Yes, so the answer is yes, absolutely. The cost of the project will be reduced by the fact that whenever we do this kind of work on the street system, we do some of the ourselves. We need to contract usually for the placement of the granite curbing. Sometimes there is some other work that needs to be contracted as part of it, but we do a lot of it ourselves. There's still, of course, a cost to that. You know, we got to buy the materials and do the work. On the question of whether or not it's a proper bond expenditure, if it's not, then you still could recommend to town meeting that,
We spend
you know, let's say it costs $50,000. I don't know what it's gonna cost, but let's say it's a $50,000 expense. You could
Yeah.
recommend to town meeting that 50,000 of the remaining balance at the end of the job be reallocated to
Right.
this work.
Because this would make that area like look
It
nice.
really
And
finish it off.
user-friendly.
Yeah.
I mean,
And a
that,
lot
you know,
safer.
everybody, you know, worries about how Elliot Street looks, and this would make it really nice. So I think
And
it's
way
right to
safer.
do. Yeah, way
The
safer.
the primary motivation there was safety,
Safety.
but you're right, it will definitely improve the appearance
Oh,
as
it'd be
well.
really great.
Are we doing it on our
Okay.
first reading?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we've had our first reading. Do we have to do anything else, or we just say we did our first reading?
You're all set?
Okay.
Thank you.
So the action plan is at the next select board meeting, we'll have the second reading and a hearing, and we will take action on those four issues. Is that good? Next up is the release of right of first refusal and waiver of a rollback tax on the Chamberlain Farm. And I'm assuming our town manager is gonna fill us in on that?
Yes, so there are two separate actions that we're asking you to take this evening. The first, I believe, is an easy one. The second one is a policy decision you need to make. So the first is to waive and release our right of first refusal to purchase the farm. And what that flows out of is because the farm was in the farm tax stabilization program for many years, there's a provision in the agreement that we have with the property owners in that program that says that if they sell the property within a certain period of time of their participation in the program, right, because they receive a tax benefit during the time that they participate, the taxpayers' interests are protected by allowing the town right of first refusal for any of these parcels. In this particular case, we don't see a town use for this parcel, and it's a $250,000 expense of money we don't have, and so I would recommend to you that as your first action on this item, you waive and release the town's right of first refusal.
Okay, would you like us to do both motions separately? or
Yeah,
at the
let's,
same
I think
time?
dealing with them separately, because the second question is a bit more complicated.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments about buying that property?
You want a motion?
Yeah, would you like to make one?
To waive and release the town of Brattleboro's right of first refusal to purchase the Chamberlain Farm for $250,000.
Great. Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions about what we're talking about? Okay. We have a motion to waive and release the town of Brattleboro's right of first refusal to purchase the Chamberlain Farm for $250,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Okay, the rollback of the taxes.
Yep, so the second question before you is, whenever a property is sold that has been in the farm tax stabilization program, the town has a right to collect, and the default action is that the town collects taxes that were the savings, if you will, the benefit of being in the program for the final 5 years in the program. But there is an explicit provision in the, and in this case, the amount of that, the value of that is 14,000 and change.
858.28.
Thank you very much.
14,858.
14,858.
28 cents.
Thank you. So, but there's also a provision in the agreement that is signed between the farm property owners and the town that says the following. The town may waive such rollback tax payments upon a finding that the sale was brought about by reason of serious illness, disability, death, natural disaster, or other hardship, or they may require a full rollback as to any sale which they determine in their sole discretion is intended to avoid the letter or spirit of this agreement. You have in the backup materials this evening a letter dated August 29th from the attorney representing Phoebe Chamberlain, who has set forth the reasons why they believe that it's appropriate for the town to grant the waiver in this case and actually find that there is a hardship.
Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments about the rollback? Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions about this matter? Would someone on the board like to make a motion?
I move we waive the rollback tax recapture payment required by the Farm Tax Stabilization Agreement between the town of Brattleboro and Phoebe Chamberlain on the basis of Ms. Chamberlain's declining health and other hardships as set forth in the letter dated August 28th, 2017 from attorney Jody French.
Right, we have,
You would need an amount, though.
I don't know if we do need an amount.
No, you don't.
No.
You would insert an amount
okay.
if you were going to take an action that would allow a partial waiver, but still will still collect some of the funds, then you need to identify
Okay.
what amount you're collecting.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to waive the rollback tax recapture payment of Phoebe Chamberlain. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. No, I'm not opposed. I'm anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0 because I'm voting in favor of it. All right, thank you for that. The next thing on our agenda is an update from the Southeast Vermont Transit, who provide the bus service around Brattleboro. So if you folks want to come up and sit at our little table here and tell us
Spanish
everything.
Inquisition.
Tell us everything you want to tell us.
Yeah. And if you can do it in 2 minutes or less, it'd be great.
And introduce yourself for
I
the
will.
public.
My name is Randy Shoemaker. I'm from Southeast Vermont Transit. We represent the mover bus service up in the Deerfield Valley and the current service in the Connecticut River Valley, and the current operates the bus service in Brattleboro. And we usually come before the board once a year. I think I've been remiss. It's probably been a year and a half, almost 2 years. But being here, I need to start off by thanking the town and the board for their support of public transit. Every year you've complied with our request for $50,000 specifically to help offset some of the cost in Brattleboro, and we appreciate that very much, so thank you. Most of what I wanted to speak tonight very briefly was the survey attempt that we're doing in town. We find that ridership on the Brattleboro's 3 routes, the white line, the blue line, and the red line, has been decreasing the last couple of years for some reasons known, some reasons unknown. But we were able to solicit a planning grant through the Vermont Agency of Transportation to bring in a consultant to help us review the situation in Brattleboro, do an extensive public outreach program, come up with a new plan, take that plan back to the public for a second round of outreach, and then eventually make changes to improve ridership and to be more efficient. The schedule that we're working with now was done in 2012 by a consultant from Colorado, and we find that the schedule that we have is very confusing to read and understand. So much has changed in Brattleboro since that time, and there are new transit demands in other parts of the town. And we feel that we can do a substantially better job in making the system easier to understand and hopefully easier to ride. And the plan is that we will not be increasing the hours of service. We have about 9,000 hours of service to work with. So we're going to massage that service in different directions according to the input and the demand we feel is there. And at the same time, there'll be no change in the fare structure. We charge $1 a ride. There is a transfer system in place. That will not change. And we've not had really any resistance, either over time or in our research efforts so far, about the dollar fare.
Just a moment about the research. We went to the riders with a questionnaire. We received almost 100 responses. We went to the general public. We had, I believe, 58 or so responses. We have had 2 public meetings in this room, and we've met with or interviewed businesses, partners, major employers in town. So our consultant has received an awful lot of input, and we're excited about improving things. Most of the input has been, can you go an hour later in the evening? Can you make the schedule easier to read? Can you reach places like all the developments up at Austin, up at the Lamplighter? Can you provide service on Sundays? We had a couple hundred requests to go to Keene, and that's a totally different ball of wax and funding versus what we're talking about here. But the timeline for the effort is we're on the drawing board right now with the consultant designing a route plan. And that process will probably take the balance of this month, and we hope to come back to the public in late September, early October with this plan for their input. And fine-tuning that input against the plan. We also go to my board, the state of Vermont. We're working with Wyndham Regional Commission. So there's a number of approval levels involved, and when that's all said and done, we'll incorporate the changes. So when will that happen? Probably late fall, early winter. We will give everybody at least 3 to 4 weeks notice before we implement a new schedule, and we'll work much harder on promoting that schedule through advertising, social media, bus stop signs, etc. So the plan is we hope to have a new and improved system sometime this fall, again, based on a wealth of input from the community.
It might be nice to have them come back, when you get the new plan and outline it here, too.
We would be happy to.
Yeah.
You have a meeting every 2 weeks?
Well,
First and third Tuesday.
First and third. So if I came the first week of October, the first meeting in October, perhaps I could work with Peter on getting on your
Tuesday the 3rd,
agenda.
or 2 weeks later, if you needed that time, would be the 17th.
Great. We will do that. We'll be back.
Helpful.
It'll be 2 appearances in 1 year.
There you go, then you can give up a year.
I know I went through that very quickly, but does the board have questions or thoughts or concerns about our plan? Yes.
I am glad that you did so much outreach to get feedback. It's interesting because I sit on a few forums where people are always voicing their struggle to get public transportation in the area, and I know that you know about the taxi service, and obviously, and I guess I'm a little bit surprised that there hasn't. It's interesting to me that what I'm hearing is different than what you're telling me, and it could be that I'm sitting in an echo chamber of a few very people that are just having a harder time than others, but you haven't seen an uptick with the taxi service going out or a need to increase hours at all. That's interesting.
What the taxi service's relationship with the current was that they provided a lot of rides for our opioid clients.
Right.
And we were able to cover those with volunteer drivers and with vans without any skip in service. So we were fortunate to be able to do that. And unfortunately, the taxi companies throughout Vermont and throughout the United States are struggling. But we work a lot with the social service agencies and the human service partners. And I think some of that input that you're talking about, we do get through them. But we're always open for more input and information. This has been a very vocal community. We did the same outreach plan from Bellows Falls to Hanover for our routes there, and we got a lot of good input for people in Springfield and Rockingham and whatever, but in Brattleboro it was really good. The state came down and they were excited.
We cultivate that.
You sure do. You sure do. But yes, that's what we're hearing. We haven't totaled all the surveys yet. I haven't gotten all the information yet, but going through them, that was the gist of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else?
Okay, you're down, you're in the chamber, do you hear, I'm wondering what your feedback was on, if anything.
I did. I met with Randy and others about this, and I think one of the things, and I don't want to. I feel like I'm putting my own town on the spot when I say this. One of the things that we've heard that's all confusing, and I learned a lot about it when we talked about this, was that there is no bus stop, official bus stop on the easterly side of Main Street across from the Chamber,
Right.
which is a problem.
It
because
used to be, wasn't it?
Right.
Yes.
So, but I think the town might have eliminated it. But,
Right.
And it causes a lot of confusion. In fact, I didn't know it wasn't there, and we were sending people over to stand there, and then I find out when Randy comes in, oh, it's not there anymore. Then I find out, well, you can stand there and wave, and the bus will stop. So some of it is like there's this confusion about where the stops are, which we had a nice conversation about because the Chamber of Commerce is actually listed as a bus stop, which we are not. But those are the kind of things that, we talked about, is making it clearer for people where the bus stops is. And what the biggest problem is, as you've already said, is that it's really hard to read those schedules. People come into what they think is the Chamber bus stop and ask us to read the schedules, and I'm like petrified because I'm going to send somebody.
Go over to stand across the street and wave.
But I think in general, people like the bus service. I think there's a fear, and you haven't borne out yet, but that, that bus routes are going to be, canceled, and they're going to be, so, and I think that based on what we've talked about, that's not going to happen.
That's right.
So I think in general, I think people appreciate the system, and it's really just making it more user-friendly. And I don't know, I've now opened a can of worms because I mentioned the no bus stop on the easterly side of Main Street, but.
That's actually come up not only in this bus routing review, but also in the parking study. And so we'll be getting advice from two separate consultants about how to make all of that work better downtown.
Now I know to tell people, go over there and go
Right.
like this when you see a bus go by, but.
It's particularly difficult when you have a client with disabilities in a wheelchair specifically, and you've got to block downtown for the 5 minutes it takes you to either board or unboard that passenger. And if there's not a place to pull over and let that person out on the sidewalk, we've just gridlocked downtown for this deserving rider. So we've mentioned that to Peter, and we're hoping to follow up with that. That is an issue.
But I really think in general, people like the service. And I think a lot more people than we know rely upon it.
Right.
There's a set group of people that is how they get around.
And I will just remind, I think I've mentioned this before, but to follow up on Kate's point, we also have 70 volunteer drivers, and you will not know that they're there because they're just in regular cars. We're thinking about getting them signs. But the idea is they are performing a tremendous service. They are doing the non-emergency medical transportation to doctors' visits, to chemotherapy, to opioid treatment, to the pharmacy. They're doing a tremendous amount of work. You might see the little vans driving around. They complement the volunteers. But the number in particular of opioid rides that the Kern is providing through volunteers really is going through the roof. And that's a very valuable, important service. And this county has one of the highest per capita rates for opioid use in transportation of any in the state. That's not to say that it has the highest users, it's just that more people rely on transportation in that area. So for all that you see the bus going around, which is wonderful, and the little buses scurrying around, there's an army of volunteers out there
Thank them for us.
doing wonderful.
That's
They will.
amazing.
And they do get paid for their mileage, but that's that's a pretty nominal thing. But in the meantime, we will report back in a few weeks, and we thank the town and the board for your support.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, I want to make sure no one in the public has anything,
Yes.
any questions or comments about the bus.
Or did my board members want to say anything? Matt Mann and Wendy Harrison are on our board of directors.
Thank you for the service.
Yeah, thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Thank your volunteers for us too.
I will, thank you.
Thank
Really
you.
amazing.
We'll see you again soon.
See you soon.
See you in a couple of weeks, Randy. Yeah,
Thank
good.
you. Thank you.
now we have two people that have been here like from the beginning. From the
Oh, they picked up another one though.
Oh, yeah. We have a
Another straggler came in.
Yeah. There was like people that were,
Starving.
yeah, we have a semi-annual update from the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance.
Oh, get right up there. You're used to it.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Welcome.
You guys all need a Red Bull? This does feel like Groundhog Day. I feel like I come and I read them. They probably sound like the same metrics year after year, but that's because we continue to do the same things and they grow. So it's a lot of the same things. We do have some additions in the update this year. The worksheet there that you guys got, it's from July 1st, 2016 to June 30th of 2017. And I'm guessing that for the viewing public, you want me to read through it?
You don't have to
I just had
read the
a
whole
question.
thing.
You don't contact inorganic people?
Oh. No, that just do you want me to explain what that means?
No.
Okay.
I've been here for a long time.
If you want to give us like some of the highlights.
The snapshots, yeah,
This
sure.
document is on the town website.
Great, so people can refer to that. But as you can see, our social media reach really did expand quite a bit, especially the followers and the check-ins. Instagram, too, I think is an area where we really can continue to build because we're able to show people the town. We're still trying to do a little bit better job tracking the social media push that we're doing with visitors to town and also with community engagement, both. That's just a hard target to get at. As you can see, we published 1,000 events on the website, sent over 33,000 e-postcards, and those are to people who have visited the website and or visited town who want to stay updated with events. So just a wonderful way that we can reach out to 30,000 fans of Brattleboro and let them know, hey, Tiny House Fest is happening, Latch Fest is happening. So just putting the town in front of people all the time. The Downtown Happenings newsletter that we send, 4,700 of those this year, that's more our regional in-town sort of marketing, right? So we send those downtown marketing newsletters to our members and to the residents in the DID. Of course, the flowers were tremendous this year. Lots of compliments on those. So we added some new buckets and those hay racks and a few new flower boxes as well. Facade program, we saw some new people take advantage of that program. So we did provide $3,000 to different downtown businesses for some facade improvements. That was Beadniks, Pamela Moore Bridal, 118 Elliot, Jasmine's Bakery, Ruggles and Hunt, Mallison. And then some of that funding did go for paint for updating the Harmony mural. We did the traditional, well, they're traditional now, sort of, I guess. They're becoming traditions. Events, the Brattleboro Gift Brat, which we probably will reinvent this year as an Instagram campaign. The holiday lighting, the Love Crawl, again, happened in a snowstorm, but still exceeded participation over last year. And then this year, Patrick from the town helped Stephanie and I get together the Brattleboro's Golden Ticket promotion. So it was a wonderful collaboration that we did with the town that had national coverage and some international coverage even. It was a very sticky event. I'll let you talk about Restaurant Week and the Buy Local stuff and some of our other collaborations.
For the second year in a row, we coordinated the restaurants in town to take part in the statewide Vermont Restaurant Week. So that takes advantage of the advertising that is already happening by that organization statewide, going out to basically a 50-mile radius of Brattleboro. And that was our second time at successfully doing co-op advertising within Brattleboro businesses. We for the first time, joined in with the Buy Local group, which has not gotten any traction in Brattleboro before, although they have run this coupon book, I think, for 4 years now. And so we kind of put ourselves out there to do peer-to-peer. So businesses talking to other businesses saying, let's all do this together. If we all do it together, then that's an impact. And so again, that's statewide PR, taking advantage of a statewide program that's already happening. And we had 32 businesses sign up. And we, I think, are second in the book for the amount of businesses in a town. So our section is quite large, and that just went live on Friday. Yeah.
Right on my home screen.
So that went live on Friday, and on top of promoting downtown to statewide tourists and to locals, it also is a fundraising tool. And so right now, 2 schools are using it as a fundraising tool, so they're selling the app and getting $10 per app, which is a lot.
So buy the app from the local schools?
Yes.
Sorry.
Then we continue to do the business group meetings, which is first Tuesday of every month, and continue to get a really wonderful attendance on that one. We average about 15 business owners. Do you want me to keep going?
Sure. Okay.
This one?
Sure. We hosted a national TV crew for 4 days. What was the name of that show?
Discovery Channel. Roadmasters.
Road Trip Masters. I was like Road Warriors. Road Trip Masters, which I don't know when that airs. I haven't seen it, but we'll let you know. Stay tuned for that. We were again named top 10 shopping towns in New England by Yankee Magazine. That might have been the first time we were named that, but in the past, we all know we've been on top 10 lists all over the place. We were featured in the Monadnock Business Journal. Named the #1 best tourist spot in southern Vermont. I don't know by whom. It doesn't say. And then Stephanie's going to tell you a little bit about a collaboration that we were involved in that achieved a grant, quite a large project. And this is just one example of collaboration. We actually have collaborated with 100 organizations this year, which is incredible. I don't even know if I could speak to all of those because I think so many people within the board and subcommittees of the board are just so active in so many projects. But you want to tell them about the NEH?
NEH grant, we are one small player in a large coalition. It's being led by 118 Elliot, Brattleboro Literary Festival, Historical Society, and many others. And it is a 3-year humanities grant with the final goal of creating an audio tour of the history of words in Brattleboro.
Yes. So that's sort of some of the highlights. And then on the flip side of your document, we just have some announcements to inform you that we have begun a fundraising campaign in partnership with local leaders to increase the capacity of Downtown Alliance for the fiscal year 18. All of these, that was missing. All of these accomplishments are wonderful and becoming so large that it's becoming a little bit unsustainable for our current personnel. So we voted to raise the personnel line item to $52,559, contingent upon the receipt of private contributions of $20,000. As promised, we'll present an appropriate job description to the town and our members prior to the completion of the fundraising campaign and the increased staffing process. The FY18 budget is changing by $5,000 only and is similar to the one affirmed on town meeting day. The $5,000 increase represents funds raised in lieu of the Parks and Plaza contract, which is sort of on hold because that project has shifted. All financial and administrative steps outlined at town meeting day to prevent commingling of funding will be presented to the town with the job description and will be adhered to upon completion of the enhanced staffing process. So, questions?
Anyone on the board have
No,
questions?
I feel like we're missing Dick.
Oh.
To rub his head.
Are you missing him?
No, and he'd be
We-
remiss.
We do want to thank Dick
No,
and
we do.
Missy for the flower.
Oh, the
Yeah.
flower. But I meant
Most
just at this
beautiful.
meeting,
I know.
Usually he has he would sit down there and worry about what he had to say. But no, the flowers this year have been, I've heard so much about them, so it's.
They
it's
are
good. But
beautiful. So, any questions or hopes, dreams, wishes, more work we can take on?
I have a question that's probably easy for you to answer.
Maybe not.
The Parks and Plaza,
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
the area?
The Harmony Place project.
People ask me about that.
Yeah, so
that's why I asked.
I'm not sure like how much at liberty I am to say because it's private property. However,
I do tell people that.
what's that?
I do tell people that, but
Yeah,
obviously
so-
there's a perception of a public space there.
Right. So my understanding is that it's a little bit on hold. We Parks and Plazas was planning to fundraise about $400,000 to complete that park design. Before we got into that fundraising process, the building owners had the better idea and the hopes of purchasing an adjacent building and then rolling the funding for the park into the financing of the new building. So everything just sort of got put on hold, which was a bit of a bummer because we jumped through a lot of hoops to be allowed to accept $15,000. That we never got because the project never ended up moving through on their timeline. So I think they're still hoping to complete that project, but that timeline is sort of out of Downtown Alliance's hands. I hope that answers the question.
I guess, well, obviously we don't know what's going to happen, but. So
Well, again, I think the hope is that that park project would still come to completion at some point. Again, it's about money. So we're going to be charged, Parks and Plazas would be charged again with fundraising, or somehow it would get financed another way. But that's the property owner's call, what they want to do.
and this may be a dumb question, but so the $5,000 increase, is that something you're asking the town for?
No, we're just informing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're just letting you guys know that this is what the board has already voted on.
Your board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And sorry. I was just, down the line, you'll sort of give us an idea of what that means as far as, because you say it's for personnel, but
Yep.
later on you can give us details on what
Yeah.
that means. Somebody's going to full-time and somebody's, or two part-time or whatever. But
Correct. We're not quite sure what the appropriate combination is going to be yet. We just know that just to continue the work we're doing, we're going to burn out all the volunteers that we have, and to then grow what we're doing and to actually meet the work plan, to fulfill the work plan, we know that we need more personnel hours. So yeah, it could mean someone going full-time, it could mean a full-time and a part-time, it could mean a full-time and interns. That's to be determined, but we will definitely come back and let you know.
Well, it definitely seems like we're getting more comprehensive reviews every year, so, which helps.
Yeah.
Helps a lot.
Thank you.
yeah.
Oh, and we're involved in the panhandling discussion too. Sorry. I didn't put that as a bullet point, but it is. It's been Stephanie's work with the not just the merchants, but people in the DID and getting all those voices heard. And now we're really engaging the residents more, because residents also can be members of the DBA, and just being a part of those conversations has been an honor and a privilege for us, and we hope it's helpful to the community and to you guys too.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything?
You're done.
All right, I'm sorry that you're not, but good luck.
Okay, I think
Next up, we're going to approve a contract with Wex Fuel Services. And I'm assuming our town manager is going to tell us about this.
This is, as described in the backup materials, a piggyback contract that we're recommending, where the town would take advantage of an existing state contract. The state, years ago, got out of the fuel business and instead issued credit cards to operators of state vehicles. What this system will do, in addition to improving our internal controls, because the folks with whom you contract, this WEX company, the way the system works is there's a card that's issued to each vehicle and a PIN number that's issued to each employee, so that provides some flexibility in operating the fleet, but also you can track every purchase that's made for fuel with the system. There's a separate set of eyes and folks who are trained to look for anomalies, because they're operating this huge system with lots of different entities, that will actually enhance our level of supervision and control over the use of fuel. So that's one benefit. An even greater benefit, we think, in the longer run is eliminating, if this is successful, we expect it to be. The state's been doing it for a while. It has the advantages that are described in the backup. If it is successful, we'll be able to eliminate our fueling station at the Public Works facility.
Get out of the gas station business.
Getting out of the gas station business will save us on liability, and it will also save us on future capital costs, and it will make the use of that property more flexible for us in the redevelopment of that when we have, ultimately make some improvements into the Public Works facility there. So it appears to us to be a win-win-win without a downside, and we have the advantage of being able to proceed with it on a trial basis, if you will, even though we don't specify it for a period of time because we think it's going to be successful. But if you approve it tonight and we implement it and we find that there are some issues that we hadn't anticipated, we can always cancel this contract and continue to use the system that we have in place.
Every large company is going this way. I mean, they're all getting out
It's
of
kind of
that.
like the waste district too. There's, private people are doing it at a better cost.
Yeah.
The only question I have, you answered my question about being able to use the space in future plans.
Yes.
We don't necessarily have a plan.
We
now
don't.
for-
We actually, in this year's budget,
Or developing.
there's the funding for developing a site plan for how we would use the space in the future.
But at some point, we're gonna have to pay to get those tanks out of there. And
That's
probably
correct.
Haul a whole bunch of dirt away too.
Yes, that's right. They're
Regardless of whether we put new ones in or not.
That's it, exactly. So we're going to incur that removal expense. What we would avoid is the cost of buying the new system and then the liability that comes with operating.
A new brownfield site. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's not a brownfield site until you stop using it. So here's the motion. Where's the motion? Oh, sorry, Kate.
Oh, no, go for it. I'm happy for you to go for it.
I move we authorize the town manager to execute an addendum to the fuel card services agreement between West Bank and the state of Vermont.
We have a motion to authorize the town manager to execute an addendum to the fuel card service agreement between Wex Bank and the state of Vermont. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next up, we have 3 issues dealing with grants, Vermont Community Development grants for Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust. And Patrick is going to tell us all about them.
Thank you. Yes, we have 3 separate actions that we're requesting of the board this evening related to 2 different projects that the town is working with Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust on. And the first 2 relate to what's called the Brattleboro Permanent Supportive Housing Project. As the board will recall, this was a $4.6 million project to acquire the Lamplighter property, to do a wholesale gut rehab of that property with an eye towards energy efficiency that will result in 22 efficiency and 1-bedroom apartments for very low and special needs populations, particularly folks that suffer from chronic homelessness. And in addition to perpetual affordability, there are going to be on-site services to work with those households and hopefully get them on the straight and narrow and improve their circumstances. And so this evening, the board is asked to adopt a grant resolution to accept and appropriate $420,000 from the Vermont Community Development Program for the project being put forward by Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, and also to authorize the town manager to execute the grant agreement, a VCDP loan and security agreement, and a program management agreement between the town and Wyndham and Windsor.
Can I move them?
Does anyone have any questions? No one has any questions, comments?
I think it's amazing. I
All
think it's
right.
great. I love the
It's just
project.
the next step down
Ready to go.
that very
Yep.
right road. Okay, well then, I will move that we accept and appropriate a grant from the Vermont Community Development Program in the amount of $420,000 for the Brattleboro Permanent Supportive Housing Project.
Do we have to do them separate, or can we do them together?
We
Well,
can move them together.
You want to do the other one?
And to authorize.
And I further move to authorize the town manager to execute a grant agreement with the state of Vermont, a BCDP loan and security agreement with the Great River Terrace Limited Partnership, and a program management agreement with the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, all in support of the Brattleboro Permanent Supportive Housing Project.
All right, we have a motion on the floor about the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust and the Vermont Community Development Program grant. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Now we need to conduct a public hearing. So do I have to convene a public hearing? Or do I have to say anything official? Or open a public?
So why don't I
hearing?
just introduce the concept, we can then open a public hearing,
And then-
record any comments which are offered, and then close the public hearing, and we can finish the business of the evening. This particular action is related to what's called the Portfolio Enhancement 3 project, which was a project for Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, which began actually back in 2014. This was a restructuring of the debt along with a gut rehab and renovation of 5 separate properties in Brattleboro, including 13 Canal, 11 Cross, 99 and 109 Green Street, and 90 Clark Street. This encompasses 29 units of affordable housing. Each of these units has been, like I say, the debt's been restructured, they've been rehabilitated for the next 20 years, and they're all extremely energy efficient. And so what's required of the board at tonight's meeting is strictly to open a public hearing and to see if there's anyone from the public who would like to comment on the project as it was conducted. The minutes of this would then be forwarded to the state for inclusion in their
Closing the.
closing of the grant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So,
Is that right now?
yeah. So I'm going to open the public hearing on the closeout of the Portfolio Enhancement 3 BCDP implementation grant. And would anyone in the public like to make any comments? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And I'm assuming then the minutes of the public hearing will be forwarded to Montpelier.
Absolutely.
Great.
I've walked by the Green Street
Yeah, it looks really,
sites.
they look really good.
They're very good.
Yeah,
That's all I was going to say.
yeah. I could reopen if you like.
No.
That will be included in the minutes.
Yes, they do, they look really, really good. Okay, next up, we have a few grants that we either have to accept or ratify, and the town manager is going to tell us about them in a group so that we can vote on them as a group.
In the interest of time, I'll give a quick summary of each of the 5. They're really straightforward items. And then, if it's okay with the board, I'll actually frame a motion for you
Yep.
because of the complexity of the 5 items, and then
Yep.
you'll be able to just say so moved and vote.
Yep. We'll
Okay.
do it.
So first is a First Wednesday grant. You probably attended First Wednesday speakers from time to time at the library. It's a great program. It is funded in part by the Vermont Department of Libraries grant for $650, and we're asking that you accept and appropriate that grant. There are 2 items that, because of the length of time in between select board meetings, I needed to authorize for submittal of grant applications. The first is the RERP grant, the Radiological Emergency Response Plan funding from the state. This is probably the last year we're going to receive that funding. We used to receive quite a lot more when Vermont Yankee was operational, but we're still able this year, as part of the closing out of that program, to get $15,000, but we have to ask for it. I authorized that that application be submitted by the August 17th deadline. We're asking you to ratify that action tonight. Likewise, the annual JAG grant, the Justice Assistance Grant from the federal government to the police department, which is used for various small expenses in the police department that would otherwise have to be borne by the town's taxpayers. That deadline for submitting that application, which again is money that's been allocated in our name, it's just there for the asking, but the ask had to be made by today. And so I authorized that paperwork be filed, and I'm asking tonight for your ratification of the application. And there is a community wellness grant for $15,000 that the Recreation and Parks Department is seeking on behalf of BASIC that would provide funding assistance towards the construction of the skate park at Living Memorial Park, asking that you authorize the submittal of that application. And finally, asking that you authorize the submittal of an application for a dry hydrant grant from the Vermont Rural Fire Protection Program. This is for a collaborative project out at 87 Goodenough Road, where a property owner is putting in a fire pond, and the fire department would like to install a dry hydrant in conjunction with that fire pond. It'll actually benefit not only the property owner who's paying out of their own pocket for the fire pond at 87 Goodenough Road, but also will benefit neighbors by providing a more ready source of water for the fire trucks. So we are asking, please, that you adopt a motion to accept and appropriate a $650 grant from the Vermont Department of Libraries for the first Wednesday speaker series at Brooks Memorial Library, and to ratify the town manager's decision to apply for a $15,000 RERP grant from the Vermont Department of Public Safety, and to ratify the town manager's decision to apply for a $17,264 Justice Assistance Grant from the United States Department of Justice, and to approve an application for a $15,000 Community Wellness Grant from the Governor's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports to provide funding support for a skate park at Living Memorial Park, and to approve an application for a $5,000 Rural Fire Protection Program grant from the Rural Fire Protection Task Force to provide funding support for a dry hydrant at 87 Goodenough Road.
Would anyone like to make the motion as read by the town manager?
Anybody feeling like they haven't done enough work?
question.
That's a good question.
This JAG grant, is it, does this grant have any stipulations for it to be used on anything that might be considered controversial? Like
I don't think so.
enforcement of any laws that might be controversial?
The department actually provided us the list of what they intend to spend it on. Let me tell you what that is. Community policing activities, supplemental funding for the outreach team, and purchasing equipment to upgrade our IT infrastructure and forensic capability.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions?
So moved.
John has moved the motion as read or suggested by the town manager. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next up is the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Annual Business Meeting. We need to appoint a delegate, and I move that we appoint our town manager, Peter Elwell, as our delegate to the ELCT business.
Question on that?
Oh, yeah.
I support their second motion. Peter, I think everybody got a letter from the VCLT that had a draft of all of the possible policies and positions that they were going to be taking on the various issues that they lobbied for the legislature.
Right.
And I think I wrote to you, I don't know if I copied everybody on or not, but one of them calls for the legislature to establish a baseline of current educational performance so that they can later on measure the effects of Act 46, and which is the school consolidation bill. And I'm not going to editorialize on that at this point. I'll save that for some other time in the future. But this, whatever happens, it's been a significant change. It's had a significant impact on a lot of communities. It continues to divide this one. And the legislature didn't, I'm not going to editorialize. They didn't include in the bill anything to do an evaluation over time to see, did it work? And what were the positive and negative impacts? And this is a call basically for feasance, just to complete the task and evaluate or assess, like we're going to do with our pumps and sewers, and for them to assess the effects of this law. So I would like to ask you, and I don't know if we want to make a motion for the board, or actually I'll make a motion unless you don't need to, based on your advice, but I would like you to promote that as a high priority for, at least from us, or from me, and hopefully everybody else.
So I'm not familiar with that particular detail. I did see your communication about it, but I haven't memorized the legislative policy document. Yeah, so my question is, are you asking for the language that's already in the document
Yes.
to be highlighted, or are you asking to insert some language?
That the language is perfect. It's just
You just want to make sure that it's emphatically
establish a
presented.
baseline so that later on you can see if
Sure.
the law works.
I'll carry that message both to the VLCT board and to the business meeting.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to appoint Peter Elwell as our representative to the annual meeting. Does anybody have? We could appoint you, John. Does anyone anyone else have any
Give me a
comments or
lunch,
questions?
John.
No,
Okay.
Peter, have a good time.
So all in favor of appointing Peter as our delegate to the VLTC annual business meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Represent us well.
Represent us well, that's right. Now we have the committee appointments. And we have 4 committees that we need to make appointments to. 2 of them have the number of people applying that equals the number of vacancies. 2 of the boards have too many people applying, so we're going to have to make a couple of decisions. Right now, on the Arts Committee, Marcia Bard is our one applicant for the 1 3-year term. Brattleboro Housing Partnerships, there's 1 5-year term. We have 2 people, Ben Copeland and Donna Rathbun. Recreation and Parks, we have 2 openings for 3-year terms. So we have 1 person applying, Connor Floyd. And the Tree Advisory Committee, we have 2 3-year terms, and we have 3 people who have applied. Denise Glover, Aaron Weaver, Mark Nicholas. Oh, I'm sorry if I keep saying his name wrong. We did interviews with the people who have contested seats earlier today. So now it's our time to vote. And I guess if we want to just start right with the Arts Committee and go right down.
I nominate Marcia Bard to the Arts Committee for a 3-year term.
Okay, Marcia Bard has been nominated. Are there any more nominations for that seat on the Arts Committee? Okay, all those in favor of appointing Marcia Bard, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed to appointing Marcia? Marcia is the new member of the Arts Committee. Now we have the Brattleboro Housing Partnership Board of Commissioners, 1 5-year term. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Ben Copeland.
Ben Copeland has been nominated. Any other nominations?
I nominate Donna Rathbun.
Donna Rathbun has been nominated. What we're going to do on this one, because we have 2, we'll raise our hands so that we can know.
Can I say something
Yeah.
about the candidate?
Oh, yeah, please do.
Look, I didn't know if that was a part of the process.
Oh, yeah.
I'm aware that the housing partnership is interested in having some fiscal support or financial support with, but looking at Ben Copeland's resume, I think it's the experience with Habitat, with the affordable housing, with the Community Justice Center, advocating for community members with disabilities, and even an employment consultant. He's got a really broad understanding of housing, particularly the kind of housing that we need in Brattleboro, which is affordable housing. And I think that it may be that the housing partnership feels the need for that, the technical support. I think the town needs someone with that perspective, and that's going to be pushing in that direction and has experience and knowledge in that field. So that's why I would like to support him.
Great, thank you. Would you like to say something?
I've known Donna for 10 years in our work together at Brattleboro Savings and Loan. I know that she's highly involved in the lending, or was highly involved, and she trained me how to do lending. She is very up on regulations, which in the lending world are changing all the time. She could probably do them in her sleep. She serves as the bank's assistant compliance officer right now. She's always very caring and compassionate. Sometimes people who are in roles of regulations and lending and compliance don't always bring that to the table, but I know that Donna does. And I believe that the work that she's already doing with our local education system around building financial awareness and readiness would very naturally flow into work with the housing trust.
It's nice to see you two on the opposite sides of the fence. Yeah, it's good to see.
Collaboration.
Little collaboration down there.
We're gonna have to juggle the seats again.
Everyone's got to shift.
So,
You want to say something?
yeah.
Please do. Do you want to nominate a third person?
No, I was just going to say that I sort of concur about some great experience that Ben has, but I would probably in this case go with a recommendation from the board itself that needs some of the financial guidance, and still encourage, as I did before, anyone who doesn't want to go on to either maybe a DRB or the Planning Commission, still looking for members.
Yep, and we're going to read the entire list in a minute. So what we'll do is, because you can vote as many times as you want, so we'll just raise our hands, and then eventually, hopefully,
I still don't understand how it's
somebody.
Oh, it's just
It's totally
Let's give it a
bizarre.
try.
Okay, so all those in favor of appointing Ben Copeland to the Brattleboro Housing Partnership, please raise your hand. Thank you.
I get it.
All those, all
How's
those,
it feel to be the lone wolf?
all
That's
those,
pretty typical, pretty normal.
all those in favor of appointing Donna Rathbun to the Brattleboro Housing Partnership, please raise your hand. Donna has been appointed, but we thank both of them for applying.
Thank you.
Now we have the Parks and Rec Board. We have 2 seats, but we, right now, don't have 2 people applying. Would anyone like to nominate someone to the Parks and Rec Board?
I would nominate, oh no, you go ahead. You haven't nominated anybody.
It's true. I would nominate Denise Glover.
Oh, no.
No,
No, no.
one up.
Oops. What?
Go one up.
Oh, I see one. Sorry.
I'm sure
Sorry.
Denise is watching now going,
I know. She'll appreciate that. I'll nominate Connor Floyd. Sorry, I thought we had gone through.
No. We have a nomination of Connor Floyd for the Rec and Parks Board. Is there any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor of Connor Floyd, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Doing it that way.
Now you
Connor
can do the
Floyd.
tree advisory.
Yep, now we
Now
have,
it's your turn.
No.
now we have 2 openings, 2 3-year openings on the Tree Advisory Committee. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Aaron Weaver.
Aaron Weaver has nominated.
I'll nominate Denise Glover.
And we have nomination of Denise Glover. Are there any other nominations? Okay, we're gonna do the, well, let's just do the raise our hand thing, just so we do it. All those in favor of appointing Aaron Weaver to the Tree Advisory Committee, raise your hand.
No.
Everyone who is in favor of appointing Denise Glover, please raise your hand. Okay, so we have Denise and Aaron, congratulations. And thanks for everybody who applied. Now we have committee appointments.
I just want to say one thing quickly here. Who came up with this?
I didn't recognize that either.
That is a feature of our IT improvement plan using
Fantastic.
the new scheduling software.
No, I'm telling you.
Right after the agenda.
No, I don't care if it's wrong, it's still, it's still a great idea.
Is it wrong?
Well, I don't understand the bridge thing because it's now on both days. I thought it was both days.
It's 2 days.
Because the one here in Brattleboro is
Oh, right.
Thursday. So
okay.
on our website, we're promoting both days, but on our meeting room calendar, we're showing just the meeting that's.
Fantastic. Just want to, whoever did it, congratulations. Very good. Now I know what meetings to skip.
Now you know which one. Now we need to do the committee vacancies. Would somebody like to read the list of vacancies that we have? Would you like me to read the list?
Yeah, no, you're sick.
Yeah,
I'll read them if I can find them.
I know.
it's an O, right?
Yeah, here we go. The town of Brattleboro is looking for citizens to serve on the following committees and boards: the Agricultural Advisory Board, the ADA Advisory Committee, the Citizen Police Communications Committee, or the CPCC, the Design Review Committee, alternate, the Development Review Board, and the Development Review Board alternate, fence viewer, by statute must be legal voters of the town, honor roll, inspector of lumber, shingles, and wood, planning commission, recreation and parks board, senior solutions advisory council, and SEVCA, recommendation only. Not sure what that means.
And if people want to apply, they contact the town manager's office, is that correct?
Yes, 251-8151.
And I'm assuming all the committee vacancies are also listed on the town website, if anybody wants to know what they are.
These are very important committees, so it'd be good to have some slots filled.
And when will we make appointments? Because that date's wrong, I guess, if I'm saying this now.
Yeah, what is the date?
September 5th, 2017, wouldn't that be the next time we're...
Oh, yeah, making an appointment.
In the near future, if we get applications between now and the September 19th meeting, anything that's received by the 13th would be in your books and able to be considered that night on the 19th. Great.
Okay, that sounds good.
And FYI, Boston is losing to Toronto 2-0.
Thanks, John. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'm not, I've already made 3 of them.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed?
Oh, we didn't even
5
go
to
till
no.
10.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ASL.
Thank you,
3 hours and
everybody.
40 minutes of action, though.
Thanks, Pete.
Nice. Thank you.